In a world where honor and duty once meant life or death, the samurai lived by a code that transcended time. Their legacy still echoes today, shaping not only a nation, but the very ideals of courage, loyalty, and self-discipline that continue to inspire the world. Under the rule of the early Japanese emperors, the concept of a warrior class had already started to take shape, though it would not fully crystallize for centuries. The origins of the samurai, a class that would eventually dominate Japan's military, political, and cultural landscape, were rooted in the turbulent environment of feudal Japan. In the 8th and 9th centuries, the Japanese archipelago was still recovering from the collapse of the Chinese-inspired Taika reforms. These reforms, aimed at centralizing the power of the emperor and imposing order over the provinces, had led to a period of instability as noble families rose to challenge imperial control. These noble families, often landowners with their own militias, began to form the first loosely organized military groups that would evolve into the samurai. The samurai were born out of necessity. As the imperial government weakened, local clans began to assume more military and political power, and the samurai served as their private armies. They were initially peasants, farmers, and artisans who, through loyalty and skill, were elevated to the rank of warrior. Over time, the samurai developed a code of conduct known as Bushido, which emphasized loyalty, honor, and martial skill. But before Bushido became the formalized system of ethics associated with the samurai, the warrior class was primarily defined by its ability to defend and expand the lands of its lord. In the early years, samurai were not yet recognized as a distinct class. They were warriors, serving as mercenaries for powerful families, particularly in the regions of Kyushu and the Kanto Plain. They were used to protect lands, fight rival clans, and enforce their lord's will. The samurai's rise coincided with the military expansion and political changes of the Heian period. As the Japanese emperor's central authority weakened, clans like the Taira and Minamoto fought for dominance, and it was during these feuds that the samurai began to distinguish themselves as an influential force. By the 12th century, Japan's feudal system had begun to take shape, and the samurai were firmly established as the ruling class in many parts of the country. Their roles evolved from simple mercenaries to highly skilled warriors who commanded armies and held land in exchange for military service. This transition marked the beginning of a new era, one in which the samurai would hold power not just in warfare, but also in politics, culture, and society. Over the next several centuries, their influence would spread and grow, shaping the course of Japan's history. As Japan entered the Heian period, the imperial court in Kyoto became the epicenter of political, cultural, and religious life. However, beneath this facade of imperial control, the foundations for Japan's feudal system were already taking shape. The central government, while grand in its design, had begun to lose its grip on the provincial regions. The aristocracy, once loyal to the emperor, began to accumulate power of their own, establishing private estates and militias to protect their land. The court's influence waned as powerful families sought more control over the countryside, and in this shifting balance of power, the samurai emerged as a pivotal force in Japanese society. The samurai's rise was not sudden, but grew out of the complex social and political changes that were occurring throughout the country. The imperial government, which had struggled to maintain control over its rural provinces, relied on noble families to govern. In exchange for their military service, these noble families granted land to their loyal warriors. Thus, the samurai began to build their power by establishing strongholds in the provinces and living by a warrior code that demanded loyalty and honor to their masters. The emergence of the samurai class was propelled by the violent clan wars that ravaged Japan during the late Heian period. The most significant conflict was the Genpei War, 1181,185, a struggle between the Taira and Minamoto clans for dominance. The Genpei War marked a turning point in Japanese history, as the samurai played a decisive role in the defeat of the Taira and the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate under Minamoto no Yoritomo. Yoritomo's victory in the Genpei War led to the rise of the first military government, or shogunate, which effectively replaced the imperial court as the ruling power in Japan. The shogunate was not an empire, but a military dictatorship, with the samurai serving as its backbone. As shogun, Yoritomo established a feudal system where land was distributed to samurai in exchange for their loyalty and military service, ensuring the power of the samurai class was solidified for generations to come. This period also saw the growth of key samurai figures who would influence the course of Japanese history. Leaders like Minamoto no Yoritomo, Hojo Masako, and Tokimune helped shape the military and political landscape of feudal Japan, often setting the stage for future conflicts and the ongoing struggle for power. Their influence was felt not only in the battlefield but also in the consolidation of social and political structures that defined feudal Japan. As the samurai gained prominence, their roles expanded beyond mere warriors. They became landowners, administrators, and enforcers of the law, wielding significant influence over both military and civilian affairs. Their impact on Japanese society grew as the samurai culture developed into a complex blend of martial prowess, governance, and spirituality, setting the stage for centuries of samurai-led rule in Japan. Bushido, the way of the warrior, became the guiding philosophy that defined not only the actions of the samurai, but also their very identity, rooted in the ethical teachings of Confucianism, Zen Buddhism, and Shinto. Bushido was much more than a simple code of conduct. It was a comprehensive moral system that shaped every aspect of a samurai's life, dictating how they carried themselves on and off the battlefield, and how they interacted with their peers, their lords, and their families. At its core, Bushido emphasized values such as loyalty, courage, honor, and respect. Loyalty to one's lord was paramount, and samurai were expected to serve their masters with unwavering dedication, even at the cost of their own lives. The concept of honor permeated every decision they made. A samurai's word was sacred, and to break a promise or fail to live up to expectations was a deep dishonor, one that could only be atoned for through seppuku, or ritual suicide. Bushido's emphasis on courage meant that a samurai had to face danger without fear, whether in battle or in the face of personal adversity. Fearlessness was not just physical bravery, but mental fortitude as well. A samurai was expected to remain calm and composed in the face of overwhelming odds, to be both an expert in combat and a master of their emotions. They practiced meditation and sought spiritual enlightenment to sharpen their inner resolve. Respect was another essential value within Bushido, not just for one's lord but for all life, including nature and enemies. The samurai saw themselves as part of a larger cosmic order, and their duty was to uphold harmony in both the physical and spiritual worlds. This sense of interconnectedness encouraged a strong sense of responsibility, not only to one's immediate surroundings, but to the entire community. The influence of Bushido extended beyond the battlefield into the social fabric of Japan. Samurai were more than warriors. They were statesmen, diplomats, and cultural patrons. They held positions of power and influence, and their adherence to the Bushido code helped to maintain stability and order in society. They acted as role models for the common people, setting an example of discipline, integrity, and responsibility. For the samurai, Life was a constant balancing act between their martial duties and their spiritual obligations. The code encouraged them to refine both their skills with the sword and their understanding of Zen teachings, seeking enlightenment through self-control and mindfulness. This balance of physical and mental prowess made the samurai a unique class, revered for their warrior skills and their deep moral convictions. Bushido was not just a way to live, it was a way to die with honor. In a culture where death was an inevitable part of life, the samurai's ability to face it without fear was the ultimate expression of their adherence to the code. It was through death, in many ways, that their honor was solidified and their commitment to Bushido was fully realized. The establishment of the shogunate marked a pivotal shift in the history of Japan, as the samurai transitioned from being a class of warriors serving feudal lords to the primary force behind the governance of the country. The rise of military rule, embodied in the shogunate, altered the political landscape, and the samurai found themselves at the heart of this new system, wielding power not only on the battlefield, but also in the halls of government. In the late 12th century, Japan was embroiled in civil war, with competing clans vying for control. This chaotic period culminated in the rise of the Minamoto clan, led by Minamoto no Yoritomo, who established the first shogunate, the Kamakura shogunate, in 1192. Yoritomo's victory over the Taira clan and his consolidation of power created a military government, or bakufu, which effectively shifted the real political power from the imperial court to a military elite. This new government was based in Kamakura, far from the imperial capital of Kyoto, symbolizing a departure from the centuries-old aristocratic rule. The samurai played a crucial role in the functioning of the shogunate. As military leaders and administrators, they were charged with maintaining order and enforcing the will of the shogun. Samurai served as vassals, governors, and military commanders, managing both the lands and the people under their control. In return for their loyalty and service, they were granted fiefs and privileges, securing their status within the military hierarchy. The shogunate system, with its feudal structure, was a delicate balance of power. The shogun was the supreme military ruler, but he relied heavily on the support of the samurai to maintain control over the country. The samurai's loyalty to the shogun was critical, for their ability to suppress rebellions, defend the country's borders, and maintain internal peace ensured the stability of the regime. The samurai, in turn, were granted the authority to rule over the provinces and to keep the peace, but their power came with the expectation that they would enforce the shogunate's laws and maintain order. The samurai's role in governing Japan grew as the shogunate expanded. Over time, the shogunate system evolved, and the samurai became a permanent fixture in Japanese politics. They were not merely warriors. They became integral parts of the administrative machinery. Samurai were appointed to manage local governance, ensuring the efficient collection of taxes, overseeing the enforcement of laws, and administering justice. The relationship between the samurai and the shogunate was symbiotic. While the samurai provided military might, the shogunate gave them land, power, and status. However, as the samurai became entrenched in the political system, their role also became more complex. They were expected to balance their duties as warriors with their responsibilities as administrators and landowners. Over time, the samurai's status shifted from being primarily military men to powerful figures deeply involved in the governance and social structure of Japan, reinforcing the shogunate's control over the land and its people. The samurai's influence in the political realm, alongside their martial prowess, solidified their dominance, making the shogunate the defining feature of Japanese governance for centuries to come. The katana, The revered sword of the samurai was far more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of the samurai's identity, honor, and unwavering commitment to the principles of Bushido. For centuries, the sword held an almost sacred place in the samurai's life, and its craftsmanship, sharpness, and beauty were as much a reflection of the warrior's inner strength as they were of his martial prowess. From the moment a samurai donned his katana, it was an extension of himself, a tangible representation of his personal code, loyalty, and purpose. The katana's history stretches back to the Heian period, where sword-making techniques began to evolve, allowing for the creation of a curved, single-edged blade that could cut through armor with precision and grace. It became the weapon of choice for samurai, perfectly suited to their needs on the battlefield, where swift, decisive actions were critical. But its significance extended beyond the mere physicality of its design. The katana was forged through a painstaking process that required meticulous attention to detail and years of expertise. Only the finest swordsmiths, who could perfect the balance between strength and sharpness, could craft a true katana. Each blade, as it emerged from the forge, was imbued with a sense of artistry and tradition that made it a work of both form and function. The samurai's connection to the katana went beyond its use in combat. It was often treated with reverence, as it was believed to embody the soul of its owner. A samurai's sword was passed down through generations, representing not only his personal achievements, but also his family's legacy. The blade was treated with respect and kept in pristine condition, symbolizing the warrior's discipline and attention to detail in all aspects of life. If a samurai's sword became damaged, it was a reflection of his own failure to live up to the Bushido code. Bushido, the way of the warrior, was intimately tied to the katana. At its core, Bushido was a code of honor, loyalty, and courage, demanding that a samurai live a life of discipline and self-restraint. The katana was not simply a tool for killing, it was a weapon of justice and integrity, wielded only in defense of one's honor or in service to a master. The act of drawing the sword was symbolic of a samurai's commitment to his cause. It marked the moment when he was willing to risk his life in battle, but also when he embraced the weight of the responsibility his sword carried. A samurai was expected to use his katana with skill, precision, and, above all, honor. The katana's symbolism extended into all aspects of the samurai's life. It was not only a tool of war, but a constant reminder of the samurai's duty to uphold the virtues of loyalty, courage, and honor. A samurai without his katana was incomplete. It was a part of him as much as his name or his family's heritage. The sword was a daily reminder of the standards he was expected to live by, and it was through this blade that the samurai could either prove or dishonor his code. The katana thus became the ultimate symbol of the samurai's identity, a perfect fusion of artistry, power, and morality, representing the eternal bond between the warrior and his unyielding way of life. In the early days of samurai culture, battles were not just a matter of strategy or war, they were battles of identity, loyalty, and the very survival of powerful clans. The samurai, bound by their code of Bushido, often found themselves locked in fierce rivalries that shaped the political and cultural landscape of Japan. The first significant samurai battles were not just fought on the battlefield, they were struggles that defined the very essence of the samurai way of life. The Genpei War, 1,185, one of the earliest and most significant conflicts that shaped the samurai, was a prime example of how battle and clan rivalries were intertwined. This war saw the rise of two powerful families, the Taira and the Minamoto, who were not only rival clans, but also symbols of opposing philosophies. The Taira, initially the dominant force, represented the courtly aristocracy and the established political order in Kyoto. On the other hand, the Minamoto, led by Minamoto no Yoritomo, were seen as the embodiment of the warrior class, asserting their strength against a more privileged but less militarily skilled elite. The battle for control of Japan was brutal and lengthy, but it was the Battle of Dan no Yura in 1185 that truly defined the early samurai culture. The Minamoto's victory over the Taira at this naval battle marked the end of the Taira's dominance, and it set the stage for the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate under Minamoto no Yoritomo. The significance of this battle went beyond the tactical success. It marked the rise of the samurai as a political and military force in Japan, replacing the old order of court aristocrats. The victory wasn't just military. It was symbolic of the samurai's ultimate goal: loyalty, honor, and the preservation of their clan's legacy. Rivalries within and between the samurai clans were not confined to mere political struggles, but were rooted deeply in the honor of each family. The samurai's code required them to fight not only for personal gain, but to secure the legacy of their ancestors. Clan loyalty was paramount, and this intense sense of honor often led to brutal internal conflicts. One such conflict, the Hojo Regency from 1203, created bitter rivalries among those who sought to control the shogunate. The Hojo family, who originally rose to prominence through their connection to the Minamoto, ultimately gained power by manipulating the position of shogunate regent. This created internal tensions within the samurai ranks, as other families who had once supported the Minamoto sought to break free from Hojo control, leading to further battles. These early samurai battles were not merely about land or wealth. They were about establishing an identity, a code of conduct, and a legacy that would transcend generations. Clans fought not just for power, but for the very soul of the samurai. The values they fought for were deeply personal, and the losses and victories of each battle were seen as defining moments that determined their honor and future. The scars left by these early conflicts would forever influence samurai culture, weaving a narrative of loyalty, duty, and the warrior spirit that would endure for centuries to come. These battles, though long in the past, are still etched in the collective memory of Japan, serving as the foundation upon which the samurai ethos would stand firm. Zen Buddhism found its way into samurai culture in a subtle but profound manner, shaping not only their martial prowess, but their very approach to life and death. Zen, which emphasized simplicity, discipline, and a direct connection with the present moment, resonated deeply with the samurai ethos. The warrior class, known for their rigorous code of honor and martial excellence, found in Zen a philosophy that aligned perfectly with their lifestyle. It was through Zen that samurai learned to transcend fear, sharpen their mental clarity, and approach their duties with a sense of calm and purpose. The introduction of Zen Buddhism to the samurai is often attributed to the influence of Japanese Zen monks, who, during the Kamakura period, 12th–14th centuries, began to establish a stronger presence in Japanese society. Initially, Zen was primarily a religious practice focused on meditation, but it soon gained favor with the samurai due to its emphasis on discipline and self-mastery. The Zen practice of meditation, particularly Zazen sitting meditation, allowed samurai to cultivate a profound sense of focus and serenity. In battle, this translated into an ability to remain calm and controlled, no matter how chaotic the situation became. A samurai who practiced Zen was taught not to dwell on fear or hesitation, but instead to be fully present, embracing the moment with complete awareness. This sense of mindfulness, combined with their martial discipline, made the samurai incredibly effective warriors. Zen also influenced the samurai's approach to life and death. The concept of impermanence, or the understanding that all things, including life itself, are fleeting, resonated with samurai warriors. They came to view death not as something to be feared, but as a natural and inevitable part of existence. This mindset allowed them to live with a sense of urgency, knowing that their fate was uncertain, yet accepting it fully. The practice of embracing death with calm and dignity became one of the most defining aspects of samurai culture. Samurai were not just trained to fight, they were trained to die with honor. The spiritual side of the samurai was not confined solely to the battlefield. Zen also influenced their daily lives, including their approach to aesthetics, art, and tea ceremonies. The simplicity and tranquility that Zen emphasized found expression in the refinement of samurai culture. The tea ceremony, with its deliberate and meditative movements, became a key aspect of samurai social life, offering a space for reflection and calm away from the violence of their work. Zen also played a role in the development of other forms of art, such as calligraphy and garden design, where the samurai sought to create beauty through simplicity and balance. The influence of Zen Buddhism helped to shape the samurai into more than just warriors. It made them philosophers, artists, and spiritual seekers. Through Zen, they cultivated an inner peace and clarity that empowered them to be masters not only of their weapons, but of their minds and hearts. In this way, Zen Buddhism became an integral part of the samurai identity, guiding them in their pursuit of perfection both in combat and in life. The role of women in samurai society, while often overshadowed by the dominant male figures of warriors, was both complex and vital. While samurai culture has long been associated with the image of the warrior men who fought on the front lines, women also played significant roles within the family and the broader social structure. Samurai women were not mere passive figures. They were integral to maintaining the household, upholding the values of Bushido, and, at times, even participating in warfare. Samurai women were expected to embody the same ideals of loyalty, courage, and honor that defined the samurai code. Their primary role, especially in times of peace, was to manage the household and ensure the stability of the family line. The domestic responsibilities of samurai women were vast, as they oversaw the education of their children, particularly in the areas of etiquette, honor, and martial arts. They were also responsible for the day-to-day running of their estates, including overseeing the family's servants and ensuring the smooth functioning of agricultural production. In this sense, women were the backbone of the samurai household, and their role extended beyond mere caretaking to include the preservation of family reputation and status. But samurai women were not confined solely to domestic spaces. In times of war, they were often called upon to protect their families and estates. During periods of conflict, women in samurai families were trained to defend their homes, and many were adept with weapons, such as the naginata, a traditional polearm. In fact, women played an active part in defense efforts, particularly when male warriors were away on campaigns. They were tasked with protecting the castle or family home during sieges, and their fierce loyalty and courage often became the stuff of legend. Samurai women had a reputation for their strength and resilience, with some even leading troops into battle or engaging in direct combat to protect their honor and their loved ones. Beyond their contributions to warfare, samurai women also had a lasting influence on Japanese culture. They were patrons of arts and crafts, fostering the development of traditional Japanese culture in a variety of ways. Many samurai women were skilled in calligraphy, tea ceremonies, and the performing arts, including no and kabuki. Their involvement in these cultural pursuits helped to preserve and evolve Japanese traditions that remain influential to this day. One of the most iconic figures in samurai history is Tomoe Gozen, a female warrior who fought in the late 12th century. She became renowned for her exceptional skill in battle and was said to have fought alongside men during the Genpei War, making her one of the few historical examples of a woman warrior in samurai society. Her story has inspired generations and demonstrated the powerful role that women could play in both the battlefield and the culture of the samurai. While the influence of samurai women was often understated, their contributions were undeniably significant. They were the silent warriors in their own right, ensuring the survival and success of their families and, by extension, the samurai class. Their legacy, though often overshadowed by their male counterparts, is a testament to the multifaceted nature of samurai society and the essential role that women played in shaping its history and culture. In the 13th century, Japan faced an unprecedented threat. The Mongol Empire, led by Kublai Khan, sought to extend its reach into the Japanese archipelago. This was a time when Japan was still a collection of feudal domains, each ruled by samurai lords with their own loyalties and territories. The samurai, who had long been the defenders of their respective lands, now found themselves united under the common cause of repelling a foreign invader. The Mongol invasions were a defining moment for the samurai, and their response to this threat shaped the legacy of their warrior culture. The first Mongol invasion came in 1274, when a fleet of over 900 ships, carrying tens of thousands of Mongol soldiers, set sail for Japan. The samurai, though skilled in combat and accustomed to defending their domains, had never faced an enemy quite like the Mongols. The Mongol army was unlike any force the samurai had encountered before, utilizing advanced military tactics, including the use of gunpowder and overwhelming numbers. The Mongols also employed the use of horseback archers who could attack quickly and retreat just as swiftly. However, the samurai's response was one of fierce resistance, and their defense of Japan would become a legendary tale of honor and courage. The samurai, led by their feudal lords, prepared to defend the shores of Japan. The first major battle occurred at the Battle of Bune, near Hakata Bay, where the Mongol fleet attempted to land. Despite their numerical superiority, the Mongols faced unexpected resistance from the samurai. However, the samurai's defense was far from flawless. The Mongols' advanced tactics initially overwhelmed them, and the samurai were forced to retreat. Yet, the samurai had something that the Mongols did not: an indomitable spirit and unwavering resolve to protect their homeland. The samurai's first defense ended in a tactical withdrawal, but they were granted a second chance when the Mongols returned in 1281. This time, the samurai were better prepared, and the stakes were higher. As the Mongol fleet approached Japan's shores, the samurai, bolstered by the lessons learned from their earlier defeat, fortified their defenses and prepared for an epic battle. The Mongols' ships arrived in even greater numbers, and the samurai knew this would be their final stand. What followed, however, was a stroke of fate that would turn the tide in Japan's favor. A violent typhoon, known as the kamikaze, or divine wind, struck the Mongol fleet, destroying most of their ships and scattering the invaders. The samurai, having fought valiantly and endured the storm, saw their defense become a miraculous victory. This second invasion, and its unexpected outcome, cemented the samurai's place in Japanese history as the defenders of the nation. The term kamikaze became forever associated with the samurai's bravery and the belief that the gods had aided their cause. The samurai's role in these invasions revealed their deep commitment to their land, their honor, and their way of life. They were not just warriors. They were protectors of Japan's future, willing to fight to the death for their country's independence. The Mongol invasions became a symbol of samurai resilience, a testament to their unyielding spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. The Sengoku period, or Warring States era, marked a time of intense conflict and upheaval in Japan. Spanning from the mid-15th century to the early 17th century, it was a time when the samurai, long a symbol of honor and loyalty to individual lords, evolved into something far greater. Soldiers in large organized armies that reshaped the Japanese landscape. The Sengoku period was defined by chaos, as powerful warlords, known as daimyo, sought to gain control over the fragmented nation, fighting for dominance in a fractured political and social environment. During this time, Japan was divided into numerous territories, each controlled by its own daimyo. These warlords commanded armies of samurai, but unlike previous eras, when samurai fought in smaller groups or as individual warriors, the Sengoku period saw the samurai taking on a much more structured and collective role. Large-scale battles became the norm, and the samurai were no longer simply defenders of their domains, but became crucial components of expansive military forces. In the early days of the period, samurai fought in what could be described as personal, often one-on-one skirmishes or small-scale battles. However, as the conflicts grew, so did the scale and complexity of the warfare. The samurai of the Sengoku period found themselves fighting in vast armies, equipped with firearms, siege weapons, and a broader range of strategic warfare. The rise of gunpowder brought the introduction of firearms like the arquebus, which radically altered the way battles were fought. The samurai, traditionally armed with their swords and bows, now had to adapt to a new style of warfare that incorporated gunfire and organized regimented units. They learned the tactics of massed combat and the importance of coordination and supply lines. The once solitary warrior was now part of a larger military machine, which required discipline, training, and a redefined sense of loyalty to a warlord, as opposed to a family or clan. The transformation of the samurai during this period was also reflected in their social role. Where once the samurai had been elite warriors with direct ties to the land and their local communities, by the late 16th century, they had become professional soldiers in the service of powerful warlords. This shift was made possible by the rise of influential leaders like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, who each, in their own way, harnessed the power of the samurai to solidify their rule and bring stability to the nation. Nobunaga, for instance, is credited with initiating reforms that modernized Japan's military, incorporating the use of firearms into his battle strategies and organizing his forces into more disciplined, regimented armies. Despite their increasing militarization, the samurai retained their warrior ethos, their adherence to the Bushido Code, which emphasized loyalty, honor, and self-discipline. However, these values were now tested and molded by the realities of war on a much larger scale. As the Sengoku period drew to a close, with the rise of the Tokugawa shogunate in the early 17th century, the samurai's role was solidified not just as elite warriors, but as integral parts of a powerful, centralized military force that helped shape the future of Japan. The samurai, once individual warriors, had evolved into the backbone of a new era in Japanese history, one that would last for centuries. The establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate in 1603 marked the end of the Sengoku period, a time defined by relentless warfare and social upheaval. After decades of conflict, Japan finally found stability under Tokugawa Ieyasu, who, following his victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, consolidated his power and established the Tokugawa family as the unchallenged rulers of Japan. This marked the beginning of the Edo period, which would last over 250 years and usher in an era of peace, isolation, and social order. For the samurai, this new era represented a dramatic shift. In the Sengoku period, they were warriors on the front lines of battle, constantly fighting for land, power, and the favour of their lords. However, under the Tokugawa shogunate, the samurai's role changed significantly. Japan's political and social landscape was transformed from one of constant warfare to a stable, largely peaceful society. This peace, though a welcome respite after centuries of conflict, left the samurai with little to do in terms of military combat. Instead of being the warriors they once were, the samurai became bureaucrats, administrators, and enforcers of the Tokugawa shogunate's rule. The Tokugawa government established a rigid social structure, with the samurai at the top, above farmers, artisans, and merchants. However, unlike their previous roles as active warriors, samurai were now expected to serve as civil servants. Many were given land or stipends, which they were expected to use to maintain their status and support their families. Their primary responsibility shifted from fighting battles to upholding the law and maintaining the stability of the new regime. The samurai became enforcers of Tokugawa policies, overseeing local governance and ensuring the peace through a network of lords and officials. In this new, peaceful Japan, the samurai's martial skills became less necessary. Instead, their identity was increasingly tied to their role in government, as well as their adherence to the principles of Bushido, the samurai code of honor. Even though their direct involvement in battle had diminished, the samurai continued to uphold values such as loyalty, honor, and discipline, which were now applied to the governance of the country rather than the battlefield. For many samurai, this was a challenging transition, as they had to reconcile their warrior identity with their new bureaucratic responsibilities. Despite the peace, the Tokugawa shogunate also imposed strict control over the samurai, reinforcing their loyalty through policies like the Sankin Kotai, which required samurai lords to spend time in the shogunal capital of Edo, effectively ensuring that their loyalty to the shogunate remained unwavering. This period of peace also gave rise to a flourishing of culture, as samurai had more time to engage in intellectual and artistic pursuits, contributing to the development of Japanese literature, tea ceremonies, and even martial arts as disciplines for personal growth rather than warfare. The samurai, though no longer the warriors of the battlefield, remained an integral part of Japan's political and cultural landscape. In the quiet of a peaceful Japan, they found new roles as civil servants, scholars, and artists, yet their legacy as the country's ancient warrior class endured, even as the nation moved further away from the bloodied battlefields of their past. The Meiji Restoration, which began in 1868, marked the end of centuries of feudal rule in Japan, and the beginning of a dramatic transformation that would reshape the nation. It was a period of rapid modernization, where the old order was dismantled to make way for a new, industrialized Japan. This change had profound consequences for the samurai class, which had once stood as the pinnacle of Japanese society. As the new Meiji government sought to centralize power and create a modern, centralized state, the traditional role of the samurai was no longer deemed necessary. With the end of feudalism, the samurai lost their privileged position in Japanese society. The reforms introduced by the Meiji government sought to abolish the feudal system in favor of a more unified, bureaucratic state. The samurai were gradually stripped of their military privileges, land, and stipends. The new conscript army, based on Western models, replaced the samurai as the country's primary military force. The most significant blow to the samurai came with the abolition of the samurai's right to carry swords. The samurai had long been symbolized by the katana, and the sword was a crucial part of their identity. The new law, which prohibited the carrying of swords in public, struck at the heart of samurai culture. For the samurai, their sword was not just a weapon, but a symbol of their honor and status. The loss of this symbol marked the beginning of their dissolution as a distinct class. As Japan industrialized, many samurai were left without clear roles. While some sought positions in the new government, others struggled to adapt to the modern world. The samurai were trained for combat and warfare, not for the skills needed in a rapidly modernizing economy. As a result, many turned to new careers in business, politics, or as educators, but their transition into the modern world was not without difficulty. Some samurai resisted the changes brought by the Meiji government. The most notable of these was the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, led by Saigo Takamori, one of the most famous samurai figures in Japanese history. The rebellion was a last-ditch effort to preserve the samurai way of life, but it was ultimately crushed by the modernized imperial army. This defeat symbolized the end of the samurai's resistance to the changes sweeping across Japan. By the end of the 19th century, the samurai had been effectively dissolved as a class. Their traditional role in Japanese society was gone, and they had been replaced by a new generation of citizens who embraced modernization and industrialization. Yet, despite their decline, the legacy of the samurai continued to shape Japan's culture, particularly in the realms of martial arts, philosophy, and national identity. The samurai may have fallen, but their influence endured, woven into the fabric of Japan's transition into the modern world. The Satsuma Rebellion of 1877 marked the final, tragic stand of the samurai class, whose power had been steadily eroded by the sweeping changes of the Meiji Restoration. Led by Saigo Takamori, one of the most revered samurai of his time, the rebellion was not merely a military conflict. It was a desperate attempt to preserve the traditional way of life that had defined the samurai for centuries. It was a battle for honor, not only for Saigo and his followers, but for the very essence of samurai identity, which had been upended by the transformation of Japan into a modern nation-state. By the 1870s, the samurai class had already been stripped of its privileges. The new Meiji government, eager to modernize and centralize power, had disbanded the feudal system, abolished the samurai's right to carry swords, and replaced the samurai-dominated military with a conscript army. These reforms were part of a broader effort to push Japan into the modern age. But for many samurai, these changes were seen as a betrayal of their values and identity. The samurai had long been warriors, defenders of Japan's traditions and the political stability that feudalism had provided. Now, they found themselves relegated to the past, their power and influence reduced to mere memories. The rebellion began in the southern region of Satsuma, where Saigo Takamori, a former samurai who had once been a key figure in the Meiji Restoration, became disillusioned with the government he had helped establish. Saigo and his supporters, composed mostly of disgruntled samurai, rebelled against what they saw as the government's abandonment of traditional values and its willingness to sacrifice Japan's cultural heritage. Westernization. The rebellion was not just a military insurrection, it was a cry for the preservation of the samurai code, for the values of loyalty, honor, and discipline that had defined the warrior class for centuries. Despite their courage and determination, the samurai were no match for the modernized imperial army. The Meiji government, under the leadership of Emperor Meiji, had invested heavily in modern military technology, and the army had become a force of unprecedented efficiency. The samurai, bound by their ancient traditions and their commitment to fighting with honor, were ill-prepared to face the superior firepower and tactics of the new military. The battle that ensued was brutal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties, but it was clear that the samurai could not win. The rebellion ended in defeat for the samurai, and Saigo Takamori, wounded in battle, chose to commit seppuku, the traditional samurai form of ritual suicide, rather than face capture. His death symbolized the end of an era for the samurai, marking the final chapter in their storied history. The Satsuma Rebellion was the last stand of the samurai, a final, doomed effort to retain their honor and preserve a way of life that had been rendered obsolete by the forces of modernization. Though the rebellion was crushed and the samurai were effectively disbanded as a class, their legacy lived on in the cultural fabric of Japan. The ideals of the samurai, their sense of duty, their loyalty, and their pursuit of honor continued to resonate, influencing the generations that followed. The Satsuma Rebellion was not just the end of the samurai as a political force. It was the symbolic end of a way of life that had been integral to Japan for centuries. The Bushido Code, the ethical and philosophical foundation of samurai life, has left an indelible mark on Japanese culture, extending its influence far beyond the period of the samurai. Even today, its principles resonate in the hearts of many Japanese people, shaping their views on duty, honor, and personal conduct. While the samurai themselves may have faded into history with the collapse of the feudal system, their legacy lives on in the values embodied by Bushido, which continue to guide aspects of Japanese society, both in personal life and professional settings. At its core, Bushido emphasized loyalty, self-discipline, respect, and courage. These virtues were not merely idealized. They were practiced daily, becoming a part of the samurai's very essence. The code's insistence on duty to one's lord, and by extension to one's family and community, fostered a sense of collective responsibility and devotion. These ideals, particularly the concept of unwavering loyalty and the pursuit of self-mastery, have had a profound influence on the modern Japanese approach to work, family, and social hierarchy. In the workplace, the Bushido ethos of dedication and perseverance is mirrored in the famous salaryman culture, where individuals often devote themselves entirely to their careers, sacrificing personal time for the good of their company. This deep-rooted sense of duty to the collective can also be seen in the emphasis placed on group harmony and the importance of maintaining respect for authority. The reverence for discipline and personal responsibility, key components of Bushido, has transcended its martial origins and found expression in other aspects of Japanese culture, from martial arts to education. In traditional arts like Kendo, Judo, and Aikido, practitioners continue to uphold the values of Bushido, which teach respect not only for the discipline, but also for oneself and others. These martial practices, while now viewed more as sports, still carry with them the ethical teachings of the samurai, encouraging humility, focus, and the constant pursuit of self-improvement. The philosophy of Bushido has also had a lasting impact on Japanese spirituality. Its respect for nature and the spiritual world is woven into the fabric of Shinto beliefs and practices. The samurai's connection to the natural world, viewing the beauty of the seasons and the changing of the landscape as reflections of the inner life, continues to influence Japanese aesthetics. Whether in art, literature, or architecture, The principles of Bushido foster an appreciation for simplicity, purity, and an emotional connection to nature, as exemplified in the traditional tea ceremony and in the minimalist design seen throughout Japan. Ethically, Bushido's influence reaches into modern life through its lessons on integrity, courage, and the importance of living with honor. The samurai's commitment to never abandoning their principles, even in the face of adversity or death, has inspired countless generations to uphold personal ethics and face life's challenges with strength and determination. This unwavering resolve to live with honor, despite changing times, has left a timeless legacy that continues to shape Japan's moral and cultural landscape. In this way, the Bushido Code remains not just a relic of the past, but a living philosophy, its teachings still shaping modern Japanese society in ways that reflect the enduring power of the samurai spirit. The samurai, one of Japan's most iconic figures, continue to captivate the imagination of audiences worldwide through films, television shows, and literature. In modern pop culture, they are often romanticized as larger-than-life warriors, driven by a code of honor and bound by their loyalty, with images of epic duels and heroic battles taking center stage. While these portrayals are powerful, they often blend myth with reality, distorting the true nature of the samurai and their historical role in Japanese society. The samurai's depiction in pop culture has evolved over the years, from the legendary stories of feudal Japan to the samurai being cast as symbols of timeless virtue and indomitable courage. Hollywood films, such as The Last Samurai, and anime like Rurouni Kenshin, often depict samurai as noble warriors, their lives devoted to a strict moral code, battling against enemies in duels or defending the oppressed. These portrayals, though stirring and rich with drama, frequently simplify the samurai's complex role in society and overlook the multifaceted reality of their lives. In contrast to the cinematic image of the stoic, honorable warrior, the true samurai were deeply entrenched in the political, military, and social hierarchies of their time. Far from being purely noble figures of virtue, samurai were often involved in the messy realities of feudal conflict, serving the interests of their lords while engaging in ruthless power struggles. While the Bushido Code focused on loyalty, courage, and honor was a key part of samurai identity, it was not universally adhered to by all samurai. In reality, the samurai were also driven by practical considerations, including the need for personal gain, family interests, and political maneuvering. This contrasts sharply with their often idealized representation in pop culture, where the samurai's loyalty and sense of honor are presented as unwavering and absolute. Another common myth is that samurai were always involved in battle, constantly seeking out combat and seeking to prove their prowess with the sword. In truth, as Japan entered the more peaceful Tokugawa era, many samurai were no longer warriors on the battlefield, but rather bureaucrats, scholars, and landholders. The samurai class had to adapt to a time of peace, transitioning from their martial roles to positions of governance and administration. Their swords, once essential tools of warfare, became symbols of status and authority, worn as part of their ceremonial dress, rather than used in combat. Pop culture also tends to focus on the samurai's role as solitary, noble figures, emphasizing their stoic nature and their ability to endure hardship. However, samurai were part of a broader social system, governed by loyalty to their lord and intertwined with complex social, political, and familial obligations. The idea of the lone warrior seeking redemption or justice is a familiar trope, but it often overlooks the crucial role that family, clan, and society played in shaping the samurai's actions and decisions. The samurai's duty to their lord and clan often came before personal desires or individual glory. While the samurai's image in pop culture continues to evoke admiration, it is important to distinguish the myths from the reality. The samurai were not just noble warriors, bound by honor and code. They were men and women shaped by a system of strict hierarchy, complex duties, and political intrigue. In deconstructing these myths, we gain a more nuanced understanding of the samurai's true role in Japanese history, figures of remarkable skill and discipline, but also products of their time, navigating the shifting tides of war, politics, and society. Honor was the very essence of samurai life, a guiding force that shaped their identity, actions, and relationships. The concept of honor, deeply ingrained in the Bushido Code, was not merely an abstract ideal, but a living principle that dictated every decision a samurai made. Honor determined how a samurai would fight, how they would serve their lord, and how they would meet their death. It was an unspoken bond that connected them to their ancestors, their clans, and to the broader cultural identity of feudal Japan. The samurai's sense of honor was woven into every aspect of their existence, manifesting in a relentless commitment to loyalty, duty, and personal integrity. In samurai culture, honor was often seen as more valuable than life itself. The ultimate expression of honor was found in seppuku, or ritual suicide, a practice that allowed a samurai to restore or preserve their honor when it was compromised. Seppuku was not merely a way to end one's life. It was a carefully prescribed act, performed with a deep understanding of its social and spiritual significance. When a samurai was faced with disgrace, failure, or the inability to fulfill their duties, seppuku became a way to atone for their perceived dishonor. It was a final, irrevocable statement of personal responsibility. A samurai who chose seppuku was demonstrating that their honor was more important than survival, more important than anything else in the world. The act itself was often a public one, performed in front of witnesses who could attest to the courage and commitment of the samurai. The ritual was precise and ritualized, with the samurai dressed in their finest clothes, a short sword in hand. They would make a cut across their abdomen, the most painful and ceremonious form of suicide, believed to release the spirit from the body. This act, however, was rarely done alone. A trusted second, or kaishakunin, was appointed to decapitate the samurai immediately after the incision was made, ensuring a swift and honorable end. This was meant to spare the samurai further suffering and prevent any lingering disgrace. It was a deeply personal act of redemption, reflecting the samurai's unwavering belief that death was preferable to living with dishonor. The most famous acts of seppuku have become emblematic of the samurai's dedication to honor. One of the most renowned was the death of the 47 Ronin, a group of samurai who avenged the death of their master, Lord Asano. After avenging their lord's wrongful death, they were ordered to commit seppuku to restore their honor. Their sacrifice became a symbol of loyalty, honor, and duty. This story has been immortalized in countless plays, films, and books, illustrating the samurai's ultimate sacrifice for the preservation of their honor, even in the face of death. In samurai society, honor was not only about personal conduct, but also about the reputation and integrity of one's family and clan. When a samurai committed seppuku, it was not just their own honor that was at stake, but the honor of their entire lineage. Thus, the act was not only a personal choice, but also a reflection of the deep ties of responsibility that samurai felt toward their families and their place in the world. Through seppuku, the samurai showed that honor could never be compromised or forsaken, even at the cost of their own lives. The importance of honor in samurai life left a lasting legacy that still resonates in Japanese culture today, reminding us of the profound weight that personal integrity and loyalty held in a world where honor was everything. The path to becoming a samurai was long, arduous, and deeply rooted in tradition, shaped by an intense regimen that demanded both physical prowess and mental discipline. From a young age, a samurai was taught that strength and skill in battle were essential, but the true foundation of their identity rested in their training of the mind and spirit. This duality between the body and the mind was at the heart of samurai education, for it was believed that a warrior who lacked control over their emotions or judgment was as dangerous as one who lacked the skill to wield a sword. A samurai's training began early, often starting in childhood, when they were taught the basics of martial arts, horsemanship, and the ways of their clan. The training was grueling and left no room for weakness. Physical strength was essential, but so was endurance. Samurai learned to fight with swords, spears, and bows, each weapon demanding a unique set of skills. With the katana, the sword that came to symbolize the samurai, a warrior's training was most intense. The process of mastering the sword involved rigorous repetition, perfecting the art of drawing, cutting, and striking. Every swing, every movement had to be precise, graceful, and efficient, because in the heat of battle, there was no room for hesitation or error. Equally important was the practice of kenjutsu, the art of fencing, which taught not only how to defeat an enemy, but how to do so with honor. Samurai were trained to read the movements of their opponent, to anticipate their next move, and to react with the swiftness of a predator. They learned not just to attack, but to defend, to move fluidly in combat, and to be constantly aware of their surroundings. Every samurai was taught to engage in both one-on-one combat and the more chaotic environment of the battlefield, where the samurai's ability to remain calm amidst the chaos could mean the difference between life and death. In addition to physical combat, a samurai's mental and spiritual training was just as crucial. The samurai practiced meditation, self-control, and study of the Bushido Code, the study of Zen Buddhism, with its emphasis on focus, stillness, and mindfulness, was central to many samurais' personal development. The samurai learned to control their thoughts and emotions, maintaining a clear mind, even in the most dangerous of situations. This training in self-discipline allowed them to approach both combat and life with an unwavering focus, undistracted by fear, anger, or doubt. Horsemanship was another vital part of the samurai's education, as warriors were expected to fight from horseback as much as on foot. The ability to fight while riding, controlling both the horse and the weapon, was a skill that took years to master. It wasn't just about riding for speed or power. The samurai were also taught the nuances of horse care, the relationship between horse and rider, and how to perform maneuvers with precision while in the saddle. A samurai's training was also about character, with an emphasis on loyalty, honor, and responsibility. These values were instilled through rituals, traditions, and the constant pressure to serve one's lord and clan without question. Becoming a samurai was not just about mastering weapons or martial arts. It was about embodying the ideals of courage, humility, and duty. Through their intense training, samurai learned that their personal strength, tempered by their sense of honor, was what defined them. The skills they acquired were not simply tools of war. They were extensions of their spirit, molded to protect and uphold the values that made them samurai. The samurai were not just warriors skilled with swords and arrows. They were also brilliant strategists whose military acumen shaped the course of Japan's history. The art of war was as much a part of their education as the mastery of weaponry, and the samurai leaders who rose to prominence did so not only because of their prowess on the battlefield, but because of their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. Samurai strategy combined discipline, cunning, and an understanding of human nature, all of which were woven into the fabric of their military approach. A samurai general's success was often determined by his ability to adapt to changing conditions, to read the terrain, and to anticipate the movements of the enemy. The battlefield, to them, was a dynamic environment where flexibility and timing were crucial. Strategy was about knowing when to strike and when to wait, when to engage in full-scale battle, and when to employ psychological warfare. A well-executed ambush, the clever use of terrain, or a surprise attack could alter the balance of power in a matter of moments. One of the most famous samurai strategists was Oda Nobunaga, who sought to unify Japan during the chaotic Sengoku period. Nobunaga's tactics were ruthless but brilliant. He employed gunpowder weapons and firearms in ways that had never been seen before in Japan, using them to break the traditional dominance of cavalry. At the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, Nobunaga deployed massed infantry, armed with arquebuses, in a defensive formation that shattered the cavalry charges of his enemies, changing the nature of Japanese warfare forever. His ability to innovate and think beyond the traditional methods of samurai combat earned him a place among the greatest military minds of his time. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Nobunaga's successor, was another samurai who demonstrated extraordinary strategic ability. After Nobunaga's death, Hideyoshi consolidated his power through a series of carefully calculated military campaigns and political maneuvering. He was a master at integrating diplomacy with military tactics, forging alliances, and using the support of local lords to bolster his position. His most famous military campaign was the invasion of Korea in 1592, where he sought to expand Japan's influence across East Asia. Though ultimately unsuccessful, the campaign highlighted his boldness and his strategic vision to project power far beyond Japan's borders. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate, also exhibited remarkable strategic foresight. His victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where he defeated a coalition of rival samurai, marked the beginning of the Tokugawa era and the end of the Sengoku period. Ieyasu's victory was the result of meticulous planning and a deep understanding of both his allies and his enemies. He bided his time, forming alliances and waiting for the right moment to strike. His strategy was not based on brute force alone, but on patience, calculated risks, and the ability to predict the actions of his adversaries. The samurai's role as strategists went beyond individual battles. It was a reflection of their understanding of leadership, governance, and the importance of control. A samurai leader knew that the battlefield was just one front of a much larger struggle. Their ability to think several steps ahead, to understand not only the tactics of war, but also the political landscape, was crucial to their success. The legacy of samurai strategists like Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Ieyasu continues to influence military thinking today, and their methods of warfare and leadership have become legendary. Their strategies were not just about winning battles, they were about shaping the future of Japan itself. The samurai were not only warriors of unparalleled skill, but also patrons and creators of some of Japan's most revered cultural and artistic traditions. While their primary identity was rooted in military prowess, their influence on art, architecture, and literature cannot be overstated. The samurai class developed a deep appreciation for beauty and refinement, viewing their martial discipline as only one facet of their existence. This cultural duality allowed them to foster and contribute to Japan's flourishing arts, enriching the country's history with a unique fusion of combat and creativity. One of the most profound areas of samurai influence was in the realm of architecture. Samurai homes, particularly during the Edo period, were designed to reflect both their status and the martial ethos they upheld. Castles, which served as both military strongholds and residential quarters, became symbols of samurai authority. These structures were meticulously crafted, featuring elegant gardens, intricate woodwork, and strategically placed stone walls. While they were designed for defense, samurai castles often included lavish interiors with sliding paper doors, delicate tatami mats, and elegant ink paintings, marrying functionality with aesthetic beauty. These castles stood as testaments to the samurai's ability to blend form with function, creating spaces that were as pleasing to the eye as they were formidable in battle. Samurai also left an indelible mark on Japanese literature. The concept of honor, loyalty, and the code of Bushido permeated many literary works, which often focused on samurai ideals and the complexities of their lives. Poetry, particularly haiku, found its expression in the hands of samurai poets, who often sought to capture the fleeting nature of life and the beauty of the world through simple yet profound verses. Samurai such as Matsuo Basho, whose works have become classics of Japanese literature, expressed a deep connection with nature and the Zen-inspired idea of living in the moment. The samurai's understanding of the impermanence of life and the necessity of embracing both the harshness of battle and the serenity of nature resonated through their art. Another significant contribution was the tea ceremony, or chanoyu, which evolved into a sophisticated cultural practice largely shaped by the samurai class. The tea ceremony was initially used by warriors as a means of cultivating inner peace, focus, and discipline. It became a meditative ritual rooted in Zen Buddhism, where every movement had a purpose, and the preparation of tea was elevated to an art form. Samurai hosts and guests alike engaged in this practice as a way to express respect, humility, and an understanding of the transience of life. The simplicity and serenity of the tea ceremony, with its emphasis on harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, offered a counterbalance to the brutal and chaotic nature of the battlefield. Calligraphy was another art form that was intimately tied to the samurai way of life. Samurai were often highly skilled in the art of brush writing, believing that the act of writing, much like the practice of swordsmanship, required discipline and focus. Through calligraphy, samurai could express their inner thoughts, their honor, and their connection to the world around them. Elegant strokes and the careful control of the brush became symbolic of their personal discipline, and their works were seen as an extension of their inner strength and character. Through tea ceremonies, literature, poetry, architecture, and calligraphy, the samurai helped shape the cultural and artistic landscape of Japan. Their legacy is one of balance, where the martial and the artistic were not seen as opposing forces, but as complementary aspects of a harmonious existence. The samurai's influence continues to be felt today, not only in Japan, but around the world, as their contributions to culture, art, and philosophy remain timeless. The samurai's relationship with nature was not just a backdrop to their lives, but an integral part of their identity. Deeply influenced by Zen Buddhism, they viewed nature as a mirror of their inner world, reflecting their own discipline, mindfulness, and emotional states. It was in nature that they found not only peace and inspiration, but also a deeper understanding of the cycles of life and death, central themes within the samurai ethos. Gardens, mountains, and the changing seasons all played crucial roles in shaping their worldview and practices. Samurai gardens, particularly during the Edo period, were more than simple landscapes. They were carefully constructed spaces designed to reflect the ideals of harmony, simplicity, and balance. The gardens, often inspired by Zen principles, offered samurai a place for quiet reflection and meditation, away from the chaos of battle. The design of these gardens mirrored the principles of the Bushido Code. The rocks symbolized strength and stability, while the flowing water represented the flow of life. Samurai would often spend hours contemplating the tranquil beauty of their gardens, using the time to center themselves and cultivate the inner peace needed to make decisions with honor and clarity. In this way, nature became both a teacher and a sanctuary, allowing the samurai to connect with their deeper sense of purpose and to reflect on their duty. Mountains, too, held profound significance for the samurai. These towering landscapes were not only physical challenges, but also spiritual metaphors. The climb up a mountain was often seen as a journey of self-discovery, mirroring the path of a warrior who sought mastery over his own emotions, actions, and desires. The samurai revered the mountains as sacred places, where they could commune with the divine and contemplate the impermanence of life. These remote areas, isolated from the world, were believed to be the dwelling places of gods, offering peace and clarity to those who sought it. Many samurai found solace in these natural environments, using them as retreats to meditate on life and to prepare themselves mentally and spiritually for the trials they faced in battle. The changing seasons also played a significant role in how the samurai viewed life. The cycle of growth, decay, and renewal mirrored the samurai's understanding of honor, loyalty, and the fleeting nature of existence. The fleeting beauty of cherry blossoms in spring or the falling leaves of autumn were constant reminders of the impermanence of all things, a lesson that the samurai took to heart in their personal and professional lives. This appreciation for the seasons helped shape their stoic acceptance of life's transience. Much like the cherry blossom, the samurai were meant to bloom brightly, knowing that their time was short, but their impact could be profound. Nature was, in essence, a teacher to the samurai. It provided them with metaphors for personal conduct and reminded them of their place in the grand scheme of things. Their connection to nature influenced not only their spirituality, but their practical approach to life and warfare. Whether through the calm of a garden, the challenge of a mountain, or the acceptance of the changing seasons, nature taught the samurai to be in harmony with themselves and the world around them, reinforcing the central idea that balance and mindfulness were keys to living honorably and wisely. The relationship between the samurai and the emperor was one of both loyalty and tension, marked by a delicate balance of power that shifted over the centuries. In the early years of samurai history, the emperor was regarded as the divine figurehead, the embodiment of the state and the spiritual leader of Japan. The samurai, who were initially warriors serving in the imperial army, recognized the emperor as the ultimate authority. However, as the centuries passed and the samurai began to carve out their own power, their relationship with the emperor evolved into one that was more complex, with the samurai often holding power in the shadows, and at times assuming the role of de facto rulers themselves. In the beginning, the samurai were loyal servants to the emperor, serving as protectors of the realm and enforcers of the emperor's will. They pledged their lives to the emperor, offering both military and personal allegiance in exchange for land, titles, and the prestige that came with their position as imperial retainers. This relationship was one based on fealty, where the samurai demonstrated their loyalty not just through their actions in battle, but through their strict adherence to the Bushido Code, which included a commitment to honor, duty, and sacrifice for their lord. For centuries, this loyalty was a cornerstone of the samurai's identity, shaping their role in society as the guardians of Japan's political and spiritual order. However, as Japan entered the feudal era and the imperial court began to lose its grip on real political power, the samurai began to assert their own authority. The rise of the shogunate, with its military leaders and warrior lords, marked a turning point in the relationship between the samurai and the emperor. Samurai warlords, such as Minamoto no Yoritomo, began to consolidate power and establish their own rule, sidelining the emperor and the imperial court in the process. While the emperor remained the official ruler in theory, the samurai became the true power brokers, with the shogunate controlling the military and political affairs of the country. In these times, the samurai found themselves walking a fine line. They still acknowledged the emperor as the divine symbol of Japan, but their loyalty often became more of a formality than a true bond. The samurai were not afraid to challenge imperial authority when it suited their interests. The most notable example of this tension was during the Kamakura period, when the shogunate established its military government, effectively relegating the emperor to a ceremonial role. The emperor's political power diminished, while the samurai, now deeply entrenched in the administration of the nation, took the reins of governance. At times, however, the samurai were called upon to defend the emperor, such as during the Mongol invasions. This relationship was marked by mutual respect. While the samurai were able to maintain their military autonomy and power, they were still bound by a sense of duty to protect the emperor and preserve the honor of the imperial family. In moments of crisis, the samurai's loyalty to the emperor could be rekindled, though their underlying desire for independence never fully disappeared. In the end, the relationship between the samurai and the emperor was one of duality. The samurai were both loyal servants and independent rulers, navigating the complex interplay of power and duty that defined their existence. The emperor may have remained the figurehead of Japan, but it was the samurai who shaped the course of the nation's history, often standing at the intersection of devotion and ambition. The samurai's code of ethics, known as Bushido, was a deeply ingrained set of principles that governed not only their actions on the battlefield, but also their everyday lives. Bushido, meaning the way of the warrior, was more than just a set of rules. It was a way of life, a philosophy that shaped how samurai viewed their duties, relationships, and sense of self. At its core, Bushido emphasized loyalty, honor, courage, integrity, and respect, values that defined the samurai both as warriors and as individuals within their society. One of the most fundamental aspects of Bushido was loyalty. Samurai were expected to remain utterly loyal to their lord, known as a daimyo, and to their family. This loyalty was not just a duty, it was an essential part of their identity. A samurai's life was intertwined with the fate of their master, and any act of disloyalty was considered a grave dishonor. For a samurai, breaking this bond could lead to disgrace, which might end with the ultimate sacrifice, seppuku, or ritual suicide. The notion of loyalty also extended to the relationship with their fellow samurai, creating an unspoken but powerful bond of trust and mutual support within the warrior class. Honor was another cornerstone of the Bushido code. Samurai were expected to maintain their honor at all costs, often choosing death over living in disgrace. This was especially evident in the practice of seppuku, where a samurai would commit ritual suicide if they had failed in their duty, suffered defeat, or dishonored themselves in some way. The act of seppuku was seen as a way to restore one's honor. Even in death, it was a stark reminder of the immense value placed on personal integrity and the weight of one's actions in samurai society. Courage was equally essential. Samurai were expected to demonstrate bravery, not just in battle, but in their daily conduct as well. They faced physical danger with an unwavering resolve, whether it was during the chaos of war or in the personal sacrifices they made. However, courage was also understood to involve discipline, the ability to face one's fears and weaknesses, and to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. Another key aspect of Bushido was the samurai's sense of duty and responsibility. Samurai understood that their actions had consequences not only for themselves, but for their families and communities. They took their roles as defenders of their lords and the nation seriously, upholding laws and traditions even in times of personal hardship. The code was also reflected in their treatment of others. The samurai were expected to be respectful, courteous, and just in their interactions, particularly with those of lower rank. In battle, the samurai applied these principles through a strict and calculated approach. Their focus on discipline and precision allowed them to be formidable warriors, blending physical skill with a deep understanding of strategy and tactics. Their actions on the battlefield were not simply about victory. They were about embodying the ideals of Bushido, fighting with honor, respecting their opponents, and maintaining control over their emotions in the heat of combat. In essence, the samurai code of ethics was a guiding light, a set of values that shaped every aspect of their lives. It defined their conduct on the battlefield and in their homes, cementing the samurai as a class committed to their honor, their master, and their personal code of integrity. It was not just a way of living, it was a way of dying. With honor and grace, when the time came, Shintoism, Japan's indigenous religion, was deeply intertwined with samurai identity, shaping not only their worldview but also their daily lives and practices. At its core, Shintoism focuses on kami, the spirits or gods that inhabit both the natural world and human experiences. For the samurai, Shinto offered a spiritual framework that connected them to the divine, to their ancestors, and to the forces of nature, providing a sense of purpose and direction in a life devoted to war and duty. The connection between samurai and Shintoism was not just religious, it was deeply spiritual and cultural, influencing their actions, their sense of honor, and their understanding of the world around them. The samurai saw themselves as defenders of the land, and this role aligned closely with Shinto's reverence for nature. The belief that kami dwelled in natural elements such as mountains, rivers, and trees helped the samurai develop a profound respect for the environment. This connection was not only philosophical but also practical. Samurai were often tasked with protecting the land and the people who lived on it, and they saw their role as carrying out the will of the kami. Their understanding of nature was shaped by the belief that harmony with the environment was a form of spiritual practice, one that mirrored their inner discipline and loyalty to their lord. Rituals played a crucial part in samurai life, connecting them to the sacred and reinforcing their sense of duty. The samurai often performed Shinto rituals to purify themselves before battle, asking for divine favor and protection. These rituals were not simply acts of superstition. They were seen as a way to align with the cosmic order and ensure success in their endeavors. The sword, a symbol of samurai identity, was treated with a deep reverence that reflected the spiritual aspect of their role. It was often cleansed and blessed in rituals before going into battle, ensuring that the samurai would fight with the favor of the kami and honor the spirit of the weapon they wielded. Shinto festivals also played an important role in the samurai's spiritual life. These festivals, dedicated to various kami, were times for the samurai to connect with their community, renew their devotion to the kami, and reflect on their role in the larger tapestry of Japan's spiritual and social life. Festivals like the Obon, which honored the spirits of the ancestors, offered samurai a chance to reconnect with their heritage and reaffirm their loyalty to their forebears. These occasions provided not only spiritual reflection, but also an opportunity for samurai to demonstrate their cultural sophistication, displaying the ideals of Bushido in their reverence for tradition and respect for the past. Through Shinto, the samurai were able to reconcile their martial nature with spiritual discipline, embodying a deep sense of honor and duty that went beyond the battlefield. The influence of Shintoism was far-reaching, shaping samurai conduct, instilling a sense of connection to the divine, and helping them navigate the complexities of their often violent and turbulent lives. In a world defined by war, Shintoism provided a vital link to the spiritual, grounding the samurai in a tradition that was both ancient and profoundly personal. The samurai, often regarded as warriors of honor and discipline, played a pivotal role in shaping early Japanese law and order, acting not only as military leaders, but also as enforcers of justice in a society governed by feudal systems. In the nascent years of Japan's feudal era, where power was decentralized and authority was dispersed among various warlords, the samurai were tasked with upholding the rules of the land, ensuring both the protection of their lords and the enforcement of the laws that bound the people to their feudal obligations. At the core of this responsibility was the samurai's unwavering sense of duty, which became the foundation of the legal system that took shape during this period. While Japan's laws were rooted in earlier imperial traditions, such as the Richeryo Code, it was the samurai who effectively implemented these laws in a fractured society. The decentralization of power meant that local warlords, known as daimyo, had considerable influence over their territories, and the samurai served as their agents, enforcing justice within these spheres. In their role as soldiers, they were entrusted with the enforcement of law and order, often dealing with the harsh realities of crime and rebellion. The samurai were bound to the feudal code, which was built on concepts of loyalty, honor, and discipline. This code, known as Bushido, was more than just a personal ethic. It became a societal framework that impacted the justice system. While Bushido outlined expectations of martial prowess and honor, it also demanded the samurai uphold the law impartially. Samurai were expected to be fair but firm, guiding the common people with both their strength and wisdom. They often acted as intermediaries between the ruling class and the general population, ensuring that the decisions of their lords were carried out with integrity. In cases of theft, rebellion, or disobedience, samurai were called upon to serve as both judges and executioners. Their judgments were expected to reflect the ideals of justice, though often their personal loyalty to their lord could influence their decisions. The samurai were not only warriors but also administrators of justice. In villages and towns, samurai were tasked with overseeing the local populace, ensuring that peace was maintained and that their lord's orders were obeyed. Any infractions were met with severe consequences, as the samurai viewed the disruption of order as an affront to their honor and the stability of the realm. As Japan's legal system evolved over time, the samurai's influence remained significant. The development of the samurai class as administrators, soldiers, and enforcers of the law helped lay the groundwork for a legal framework that would later evolve into the more formalized systems seen in the Tokugawa period. By blending martial values with legal authority, the samurai played an integral role in the formation of Japanese law, leaving an enduring legacy that intertwined the warrior spirit with the very foundations of Japan's justice system. In doing so, they ensured that the principles of law, honor, and duty continued to resonate through Japan's history for centuries to come. The creation of the katana, the samurai's legendary sword, was an art form that demanded both intricate craftsmanship and profound understanding of materials, heat, and technique. For centuries, Japanese swordsmiths honed their skills to produce blades that were not only deadly weapons, but also masterpieces of functionality and beauty. The process of making a katana was as much an alchemical pursuit as it was a craft, where the swordsmith transformed raw materials into an object that would carry the weight of honor and the spirit of the samurai. The journey of making a katana began with the selection of iron sand, known as tatara, which was refined in a smelting process that removed impurities to yield the highest quality steel. This steel, often made up of two types, a harder steel for the edge and a softer steel for the body, was layered together through a folding process. As the layers were folded repeatedly, each fold compacted the metal, resulting in a blade of exceptional strength and flexibility. This method of folding, sometimes as many as 16 or more times, not only created a steel of incomparable quality, but also left unique patterns in the blade known as hamon, which gave each katana its signature appearance. These subtle undulations on the blade's surface were not merely ornamental, but enhanced the sword's cutting ability, making it an efficient weapon in battle. The skill of the swordsmith, however, went beyond just the physical process. Each swordsmith brought a deep understanding of the katana's function in battle, the balance between form and function, and the spiritual significance of the blade. The samurai saw their katana as an extension of themselves, a spiritual partner in combat, and as such, the swordsmiths were revered for their ability to forge not only blades, but also symbols of the samurai's soul. The delicate balance of the blade, its sharpness, and its resilience were central to the swordsmith's craft, and the katana's curve allowed for swift and precise strikes, reflecting the samurai's need for agility and precision. Some swordsmiths, such as the legendary Masamune, became famous for their ability to create swords that were not only functional, but also beautiful. Masamune, who worked in the Kamakura period, is widely considered one of the greatest swordsmiths in Japanese history. His katanas were known for their razor-sharp edges and the graceful, curved lines of their hamon. The reputation of swordsmiths like Masamune was built on their mastery of both science and artistry, as each blade was a work of dedication, requiring meticulous attention to detail and a profound respect for the materials. Throughout Japanese history, swordsmiths passed down their knowledge through generations, and their craft became intertwined with the identity of the samurai. The katana was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of the samurai's honor, discipline, and martial prowess. In the hands of a skilled warrior, the katana could strike with lethal precision. But it was also a reflection of the soul of the samurai. As much as the blade itself was a masterpiece, so too was the art of its creation, an art that was passed down through generations, becoming as legendary as the warriors who wielded it. The samurai's armor was more than just a tool for protection. It was a reflection of the warrior's identity, status, and the evolving nature of warfare in feudal Japan. Over centuries, samurai armor underwent significant changes, adapting to the shifting demands of both battle and society. The design of the armor was an intricate blend of practicality and symbolism, and it served as both a shield against physical harm and a display of the samurai's honor. At its core, samurai armor was designed to provide maximum protection while allowing the wearer flexibility and mobility. The earliest samurai armor, from the Heian period, was relatively simple, consisting of a combination of leather and metal plates. These plates were attached to a fabric backing and arranged to cover the torso, shoulders, and legs, offering adequate defense against arrows and swords. However, as warfare became more complex and battles larger, armor designs evolved. The introduction of the yoroi, and later the do, maru, and hozo armor sets with their overlapping iron plates and intricate lacing, allowed for more comprehensive protection while still maintaining a warrior's agility. The samurai's helmet, or kabuto, was perhaps the most symbolic piece of their armor. often adorned with elaborate crests, horns, and intricate designs. It was a striking visual representation of the samurai's individual identity. Some helmets were designed to represent specific family crests, while others bore artistic flourishes meant to intimidate enemies and symbolize a connection to ancient traditions or even gods. The kabuto was not merely a protective piece. It was a work of art, representing the samurai's pride and social standing. The breastplate, known as the do, was another vital component of the samurai's armor. Made of metal plates and lacquered leather, the do was not only practical in protecting the samurai's chest, but also a canvas for the display of wealth and status. The samurai elite, especially during the Edo period, had armor that was highly decorated with gold leaf, intricate engravings, and vibrant lacquers. For the lower-ranked samurai, the armor was simpler and less ornate, reflecting their more modest position in society. While the functionality of samurai armor was crucial, its symbolic meaning was equally important. Armor, especially in times of peace, was a representation of the wearer's status within the samurai hierarchy. A well-maintained, decorated set of armor signified not just a warrior's skill, but also his wealth, lineage, and position in society. Samurai were often judged based on the appearance and quality of their armor, as it signified the prestige of their family and clan. As Japan entered the Edo period, the need for battle-ready armor decreased due to the country's long period of peace. However, armor did not disappear. Instead, it evolved into ceremonial attire. Worn by samurai during important events, festivals, or in the presence of their lords, the armor, now more symbolic than practical, became a timeless representation of the samurai's enduring legacy. Even in times of peace, it stood as a testament to the history, pride, and power of Japan's warrior class. The Battle of Sekigahara, fought on October 21, 1600, was one of the most significant turning points in Japan's history. It was not only a decisive military clash, but also a culmination of the tumultuous Sengoku period, a time marked by constant warfare and the fragmentation of power among feudal lords. The samurai, as the backbone of Japan's military power, played a pivotal role in this battle, which ultimately determined the future course of the nation. The battle was a contest for dominance between two factions. The Eastern Army, led by Tokugawa Ieyasu, and the Western Army, commanded by Ishida Mitsunari. Both men were powerful samurai generals who had significant influence, and their rivalry had been building for years. Ieyasu, a shrewd strategist and the leader of the Tokugawa clan, had spent decades consolidating power, while Mitsunari, a loyalist of the Toyotomi family, sought to preserve the influence of his lord, Toyotomi Hideyori. On the day of the battle, the samurai took to the battlefield in full force. The warriors fought with the fierce resolve that defined their class, their honor and loyalty to their commanders, driving them to endure the brutality of war. However, Sekigahara was not merely a battle of individual heroism. The shifting alliances, the betrayal of several samurai lords, and the intricate strategies employed by both sides determined the outcome. The battlefield was filled with the clash of swords, the roar of war cries, and the chaos of combat. Yet, the true turning point of the battle came not from sheer military might, but from the political maneuvering and tactical brilliance of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu's victory was due in no small part to his ability to forge crucial alliances using both persuasion and, when necessary, subtle manipulation. As the battle unfolded, Ieyasu's forces, although initially outnumbered, were bolstered by a series of betrayals among the Western Army's ranks. Some of the samurai, including key commanders, switched sides in the heat of battle, abandoning Mitsunari's cause. These defections, while devastating to the Western Army, were a testament to Ieyasu's ability to exploit his enemies' weaknesses and divide their forces. The victory at Sekigahara marked the end of the Sengoku period and set the stage for the unification of Japan under Tokugawa Ieyasu. It was a crucial moment for the samurai, as it brought an end to the era of chaos and warfare that had defined their existence for centuries. Ieyasu's subsequent rise to power and the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate heralded a new era of peace and stability, known as the Edo period. For the samurai, the Battle of Sekigahara symbolized the transition from the chaotic, honor-driven world of constant warfare to a more structured, centralized society. It marked the end of the samurai's role as warriors constantly engaged in battle and their transformation into bureaucrats and retainers under the shogunate's rule. The samurai's role in the Battle of Sekigahara, therefore, was not only crucial in shaping the outcome of the conflict, but also in determining the future of Japan itself. Their loyalty, their sacrifices, and their actions on the battlefield directly influenced the unification of the country, which laid the foundation for over 2 centuries of peace and prosperity under the Tokugawa regime. Sekigahara was the battle that not only decided the fate of Japan's samurai, but also forged the path to its modern history. The history of Japan's samurai clans is marked by power struggles, ambition, betrayal, and ultimate transformation. Prominent clans such as the Oda, Toyotomi, and Tokugawa have left lasting imprints on the nation's history, each clan rising to prominence and then, in some cases, falling from grace. Their stories, full of strategic brilliance and personal ambition, shaped the course of Japan's medieval and early modern history. The Oda clan, led by Oda Nobunaga, played a critical role in the late Sengoku period, a time of constant warfare among competing daimyo, feudal lords. Nobunaga's leadership was marked by unprecedented military innovation and ruthless tactics. His ambitions to unify Japan were supported by his mastery of both battlefield strategy and political maneuvering. Under his rule, the Oda clan rose rapidly, capturing key territories and laying the groundwork for the eventual unification of Japan. Nobunaga's famous victory at the Battle of Okehazama in 1560, where he defeated a much larger army, showcased his genius and cemented his reputation. However, despite his successes, Nobunaga's reign was short-lived. In 1582, he was betrayed by one of his own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, leading to his dramatic death at Honnoji Temple in Kyoto. The fall of Oda Nobunaga was not the end of his clan's ambitions, but it marked a significant shift in the balance of power in Japan. After Nobunaga's death, his general, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, took the mantle of leadership. Hideyoshi's rise from humble beginnings to becoming the second great unifier of Japan is a testament to his political savvy and military prowess. Through a combination of military campaigns, alliances, and shrewd diplomacy, Hideyoshi succeeded in consolidating power, and by the 1590s, he had brought nearly all of Japan under his control. His famous invasions of Korea and his efforts to control the samurai class through land redistribution further cemented his legacy. Yet, like Nobunaga, Hideyoshi's reign was ultimately fleeting. His death in 1598 left a power vacuum that would be contested by his successors, leading to the rise of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu, a former ally of Nobunaga and Hideyoshi, capitalized on the chaos that followed Hideyoshi's death. The Tokugawa clan had been a powerful force in the region, and Ieyasu's patience and strategic foresight led him to victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600. This pivotal battle effectively ended the Sengoku period and marked the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate, a period of relative peace and stability that lasted over 250 years. Ieyasu's clan firmly established its rule, and the samurai class, once engaged in endless conflict, became retainers of the Tokugawa government, overseeing a carefully regulated and centralized society. The rise and fall of these samurai clans illustrate the fragile nature of power in Japan's feudal era. While the Oda and Toyotomi clans each contributed significantly to Japan's unification, their downfall highlighted the volatile and treacherous world of the samurai. The Tokugawa, however, managed to establish a lasting legacy, solidifying the samurai's role in a stable, regulated society. Despite the shifting fortunes of these clans, their influence on Japan's history remains undeniable, shaping not only the country's political structure, but its culture, military strategies, and societal norms for generations to come. Samurai leadership in Japan underwent a profound transformation, from powerful regional daimyos to the centralized authority of the shogunate system. The role of samurai leaders evolved alongside the changing political landscape of Japan, particularly during the Sengoku period, a time of nearly constant civil war. During this era, regional daimyos controlled large swathes of territory, each overseeing their samurai, managing land, and commanding their warriors in frequent battles. These daimyos were both military leaders and political figures, tasked with maintaining order within their domains while expanding their influence through strategic alliances, warfare, and diplomacy. The daimyos wielded significant power, often ruling over hundreds of thousands of people. They were responsible for the welfare of their subjects, overseeing agricultural production, taxation, and the protection of their territories. Their authority, however, was not absolute, as their samurai were bound by the Bushido Code, and the warriors' loyalty and discipline were crucial to maintaining control. The daimyos relied on their samurai to enforce law and order, manage internal disputes, and defend against external threats. This dynamic gave rise to the importance of a leader's charisma and the ability to maintain the loyalty of their samurai. A daimyo who could inspire and lead successfully gained the respect of both his warriors and the people under his rule. The transition from this fragmented system of regional leadership to the nationalized system of the shogunate began, with the unification efforts of Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and finally Tokugawa Ieyasu. Each of these leaders sought to consolidate power and establish a central authority that would bring stability to the country. Nobunaga's innovations in warfare and his attempts to centralize power marked the first major step toward this transformation, though it was Hideyoshi who brought the nation closer to unification. By the time Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, Japan's feudal system was on the brink of a major shift. Ieyasu's victory solidified his control over the country, effectively ending the Sengoku period and marking the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate. As the shogun, Ieyasu held ultimate authority over Japan, though he was careful to maintain the appearance of respecting the emperor's power. This dual authority, where the emperor retained symbolic importance while the shogun ruled the nation, became the foundation of the Tokugawa system. Under Ieyasu and his successors, the samurai were no longer regional warlords, but became servants to the centralized government, operating within a structured hierarchy that maintained peace and order across the country. The Tokugawa shogunate implemented a strict system of control over the daimyos, requiring them to live in Edo, modern-day Tokyo. every other year, a policy known as Sankin Kotai. This system not only ensured the loyalty of the regional leaders, but also helped solidify the power of the shogunate by making the daimyos dependent on it for both their wealth and influence. The transition from the individualistic daimyos to the nationalized shogunate system transformed the samurai's role in society, as their duties shifted from feudal warfare to maintaining peace and stability within a tightly controlled society. In this new structure, samurai leadership was no longer defined by personal ambition or the control of land, but by loyalty to the shogunate and the enforcement of its policies. The samurai became integral to the functioning of a stable, peaceful Japan, their once dominant role in warfare giving way to bureaucratic and administrative responsibilities. This shift in leadership and governance helped usher in a period of relative peace and prosperity under the Tokugawa shogunate, fundamentally changing the relationship between samurai and their society. The relationship between the samurai and peasants in feudal Japan was complex and shifted over time as the political and social structures of the country evolved. In the earliest days, during the rise of the samurai class, there was a distinct separation between warriors and farmers. But the samurai also depended heavily on the labor of peasants to sustain their livelihoods. The samurai, as military elites, were granted land by their lords, but it was the peasants who tilled the soil and provided the resources needed to maintain the wealth of the land. In this early period, peasants were seen as an essential part of the agricultural system, but they were also considered lower in status than the samurai. As Japan entered the medieval and early feudal periods, the samurai's role as landowners and military leaders began to define their relationship with the peasants. The samurai often worked directly with peasants to manage their estates, overseeing agricultural production and ensuring the protection of the land. However, this relationship was rooted in a hierarchy, with the samurai positioned at the top and the peasants serving as the labor force that sustained the entire system. The samurai viewed peasants as subjects who were responsible for providing the resources necessary to maintain the feudal structure. Though peasants were valued for their agricultural output, their lives were often controlled by the samurai, and they were expected to show loyalty and obedience. Over time, however, the relationship between the samurai and peasants began to change, particularly during the peaceful Edo period under the Tokugawa shogunate. With the onset of relative stability and the end of constant warfare, the samurai's role shifted from that of warrior to that of administrator. In this new society, samurai were granted stipends from their lords, but they no longer relied as heavily on the peasants for military support. As the samurai turned to bureaucratic roles and administrative tasks, the peasants' role in society became increasingly vital in terms of economic production. However, despite the shift in the samurai's duties, the social hierarchy remained firmly in place, with the samurai still occupying a higher status. Peasants, despite their essential role in maintaining the economy, were still viewed as lower class. They were tied to the land through a system of hereditary labor, and many of them were unable to leave the land they worked on without the permission of their lords. Their lives were often difficult, filled with the hardships of poor harvests, taxes, and the constant oversight of samurai who governed their land. However, peasants, like the samurai, had their own sense of identity and cultural traditions. During times of rebellion or unrest, they could, at times, rise up against their samurai overlords. The most famous of these uprisings was the 17th century peasant revolts, which showcased the strength of the peasantry when pushed to the brink. The samurai, in turn, came to view the peasants in a more complex light over time. With the peace of the Edo period, samurai were tasked with enforcing social order, which often meant working in tandem with the peasants to maintain the stability of the rural economy. While the samurai's role as warriors faded, their relationship with the peasants remained based on a long-standing feudal loyalty. The peasants, though at the bottom of the social hierarchy, continued to play a crucial part in the sustenance of the samurai and the land they controlled. By the end of the Edo period, while the samurai and peasants maintained their distinct roles, their relationship had evolved from one of pure dominance to a more interdependent one, where both classes, though unequal, relied on each other to ensure societal stability. Loyalty was the bedrock of samurai identity, deeply ingrained in their sense of duty and honor. This unwavering commitment to their lords, families, and fellow samurai shaped every aspect of their lives. The concept of loyalty went beyond mere obedience. It was a sacred bond that defined the very purpose of a samurai's existence. A samurai's life was intricately woven into the hierarchical structure of feudal Japan, where loyalty was both a personal and a social responsibility. The samurai did not view their relationship with their lord as a contractual one, but as a lifelong obligation, a duty that was often passed down through generations. To betray this loyalty was not only a moral failure, but a disgrace that could ruin a family's honor for generations to come. This bond of loyalty was exemplified in the samurai's dedication to their lord. A samurai was expected to serve his lord with complete devotion, often sacrificing his own life if necessary. In times of war, this loyalty was shown in battle, where samurai fought not just for land or riches, but to defend the honor and safety of their lord. Even in peaceful times, the samurai demonstrated their loyalty through everyday service, managing lands, administering justice, and providing counsel. This deep connection to their lord was embodied in the samurai's concept of Bushido, the warrior code, which demanded absolute loyalty, honor, and courage. In the samurai's eyes, their honor was intrinsically linked to their lord's standing and reputation. A samurai's actions were not only a reflection of his own character, but also of his lord's integrity. The samurai's loyalty was not limited to their relationships with their lords, but extended to their fellow warriors. The bond between samurai comrades was formed through shared hardships, battles, and oaths. Samurai fought not only for their lord's honor, but for the honor of their brothers in arms. Loyalty among samurai was expressed through a sense of collective responsibility, where each individual's actions affected the group as a whole. A samurai was expected to look out for the well-being of his comrades, whether in the heat of battle or during moments of peace. The sense of unity and mutual respect between samurai often forged lifelong friendships that transcended simple alliances. Perhaps the most profound demonstration of loyalty was seen in the practice of seppuku, or ritual suicide. When a samurai's loyalty was questioned or his lord died, the act of seppuku became a final demonstration of commitment. It was believed that by ending his own life in a manner prescribed by Bushido, the samurai could restore his honor and prove his loyalty. This tragic yet powerful act revealed the depth of the samurai's devotion, where personal sacrifice was seen as the ultimate expression of loyalty and honor. Loyalty also played a significant role in samurai family life. Fathers passed down their sense of duty to their sons, teaching them the importance of loyalty from an early age. Sons, in turn, grew up with the understanding that their loyalty to their father, their family, and their lord would shape their identity and their place in society. Loyalty was not just a personal virtue, but a societal expectation, one that ensured the samurai's position as the dominant warrior class in feudal Japan. It was this relentless commitment to duty, honor, and each other that made the samurai a formidable force in Japanese history. The Japanese tea ceremony, or chanoyu, evolved into one of the most significant cultural rituals in Japan, and it became intrinsically tied to the samurai class. Originally, tea drinking had been a pastime of the elite, but over time, it transformed into a meditative practice that encapsulated the values of simplicity, humility, and discipline traits that resonated deeply with the samurai. In the world of the samurai, where martial prowess and honor were paramount, the tea ceremony offered a quiet refuge, a space where they could reflect on the deeper meanings of life and death. It was a practice that required great attention to detail and a mastery of refined skill, and samurai embraced it as an opportunity to cultivate their inner discipline. The tea ceremony, under the influence of figures like Sen no Rikyu, became a way for the samurai to show their humility. In a society where status and power were often displayed through strength and combat, the tea ceremony provided an alternative means for samurai to demonstrate grace, composure, and thoughtfulness. The ritual required a person to discard the arrogance that often accompanied military life and embrace the simplicity of everyday gestures. Samurai, who were used to commanding large armies and wielding power, found in the tea ceremony an act of submission, an opportunity to express their respect for the natural world, the other participants, and the art of tea making itself. The samurai's involvement in the tea ceremony was a reflection of their ability to wield power, not only on the battlefield, but also in the intimate, serene environment of the tea room, where power manifested in control over one's emotions and actions. The ceremony was a physical embodiment of the samurai's commitment to discipline. Every gesture during the tea preparation and serving process, from the precise movements of the hands to the careful attention to temperature and timing, demanded concentration and focus. There was no room for distraction or haste, only for careful and deliberate actions. In this way, the tea ceremony mirrored the samurai's martial practices. Both required a deep awareness of the present moment, a mastery of skill, and the ability to maintain composure even in the face of challenge. For the samurai, the discipline cultivated in the tea room translated into their daily lives and battle strategies, reinforcing the idea that the mind and body must work in unison. Moreover, the tea ceremony acted as a subtle but profound reminder of the fleeting nature of life, a theme that the samurai, well acquainted with death, understood intimately. The rituals surrounding the preparation of tea, with their deep emphasis on impermanence and respect for the present, allowed samurai to reflect on the transient nature of their existence. The tools, the setting, and even the tea itself all were treated with reverence and care, symbolizing the ephemeral nature of life. This ritual, therefore, became not just an aesthetic practice, but a spiritual one, offering samurai an opportunity to confront mortality with quiet dignity. In embracing the tea ceremony, the samurai revealed a side of themselves that went beyond the battlefield. It was a way to practice humility, discipline, and mindfulness, virtues that were as vital to their identity as their skill in combat. The tea room became, in essence, a place where the samurai could cultivate the virtues that shaped both their public and private lives, making the tea ceremony an integral part of the samurai's spiritual and cultural legacy. The samurai's legacy is woven into the very fabric of modern Japan, where their influence can still be felt in many aspects of society. While the era of the samurai ended in the late 19th century, the cultural values they embodied continue to resonate with contemporary Japanese people. Their ideals of loyalty, discipline, and honor have become deeply ingrained in the national consciousness, influencing not only social customs but also political and educational practices. The samurai's emphasis on self-discipline and respect for authority, for example, remains central to the Japanese approach to education. The traditional respect for the teacher-student relationship and the rigorous standards expected of students can be traced back to the samurai ethos, where learning was considered a lifelong endeavor worthy of the same dedication given to martial training. The samurai were scholars and warriors, and this blending of intellectual pursuit with physical discipline became a cornerstone of the educational system, where diligence and respect for one's teacher were paramount. In politics, the samurai's legacy is equally profound. The structure of Japan's feudal society, which was shaped by the samurai class, left a lasting impact on the nation's political systems. The hierarchical nature of samurai society, with its strict codes of loyalty and duty, can be seen mirrored in modern Japan's political structures, where respect for authority and adherence to tradition continue to play significant roles. The samurai's role as both military leaders and bureaucrats influenced the development of Japan's government, particularly in the way leaders view their responsibilities to the nation and their subordinates. Even today, Japanese political leaders are often expected to embody a sense of duty that goes beyond personal ambition, reflecting the samurai's commitment to serving the greater good of the nation. Culturally, the samurai's influence remains as powerful as ever, with their ideals continuing to shape the Japanese concept of honor and respect. Many of Japan's modern cultural practices, from the art of calligraphy to the tea ceremony, owe their origins to the samurai. Their appreciation for aesthetics, attention to detail, and dedication to perfection are evident in everything from Japanese architecture to the precision found in modern martial arts. Furthermore, the samurai's legacy is celebrated in popular culture, from films and television shows to anime and manga, where their code of honor is often idealized. Characters who embody samurai-like qualities such as courage, discipline, and loyalty continue to captivate audiences, reinforcing the enduring appeal of the samurai spirit. Moreover, the samurai's values of humility and service have influenced Japan's business culture. In many Japanese companies, the concept of wa, harmony, is central, with workers expected to put the interests of the group above individual desires. Much like the samurai's loyalty to their lords and clans, the samurai's idea of self-improvement, through both physical and mental discipline, aligns with Japan's approach to constant innovation and striving for excellence, especially in industries like technology and craftsmanship. In essence, the samurai's legacy in modern Japan is not just a historical curiosity, but a living influence that continues to shape the nation's identity. Their contributions to Japanese culture, politics, and society are enduring, creating a profound connection between the past and the present that remains a vital part of Japan's national spirit. The samurai, though gone, are far from forgotten. Their ideals continue to guide and inspire the people of Japan today. As Japan entered the Meiji era in the late 19th century, the country was undergoing a profound transformation. The arrival of Western powers, especially after the forced opening of Japan by Commodore Perry in 1853, exposed the nation to new ideas, technologies, and systems of governance. These encounters with the West marked the beginning of a period where traditional samurai values were increasingly challenged by Western influence. The rapid modernization of Japan required a rethinking of its military, political, and social structures, all of which had been dominated by the samurai class for centuries. One of the most significant ways in which Western ideas began to influence the samurai was through Japan's military reforms. The samurai had long been the backbone of Japan's armed forces, and their skills in Bushido, swordsmanship, and strategic warfare were unmatched. However, with the rise of Western imperial powers and their advanced technology, the samurai's traditional role as soldiers became less relevant. Western-style military tactics, along with the adoption of firearms and modern weaponry, replaced the samurai's traditional weaponry, such as the katana, on the battlefield. The samurai, whose identity had been so tied to their martial prowess, and now found themselves confronted with a changing landscape of warfare. The new Meiji government sought to integrate Japan into the global community and become an industrialized modern power. As a result, traditional practices were rapidly replaced by Western institutions. The samurai class, which had once wielded significant political power, found itself relegated to a more symbolic role in society. The feudal system was dismantled, and with it, the samurai's privileges and responsibilities. Western political structures, such as the idea of a constitution and parliamentary democracy, began to replace the hierarchical and rigid samurai-dominated system of governance. With the dissolution of the samurai class came the loss of their traditional role in society. The once highly respected values of honor, loyalty, and discipline were still upheld in some respects, but they began to take on new meanings in the context of a rapidly changing society. Samurai, who had once seen themselves as defenders of Japan's ancient culture and way of life, now had to adapt to a world that was increasingly influenced by Western ideas of progress, democracy, and capitalism. Despite the decline of the samurai as a formal class, their values continued to resonate with the emerging Japanese identity. Samurai principles of honor, duty, and loyalty found their way into Japan's new military and business practices. The concept of self-discipline, which had been central to the samurai code of Bushido, was incorporated into the modern Japanese work ethic, which emphasized hard work, respect for authority, and devotion to the greater good. While the samurai themselves were no longer at the forefront of Japanese society, their legacy lived on in the values they had instilled in the nation. In the face of Western influence, Japan's ability to adapt and merge its traditional samurai ideals with modern, globalized systems of governance and economy played a crucial role in its successful modernization. The samurai, in many ways, had laid the foundation for the transformation of Japan into a modern power, even as their own role in society diminished. The samurai were not just fierce warriors, but also brilliant strategists who shaped the course of Japanese military history. Throughout the centuries, many samurai commanders earned their place in history, not only for their skill in battle, but for their remarkable ability to strategize, outmaneuver, and adapt to ever-changing battlefield conditions. These leaders displayed a deep understanding of tactics and the psychological aspects of warfare, often using intelligence and surprise to gain the upper hand in battle. One of the most famous samurai commanders, Oda Nobunaga, demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking during the Sengoku period, a time of almost constant civil war in Japan. Known for his innovative approach to warfare, Nobunaga embraced firearms at a time when they were still a novelty on the battlefield. In the pivotal Battle of Nagashino in 1575, Nobunaga used his infantry, armed with arquebuses, in coordinated volleys to decimate the cavalry of Takeda Katsuyori. This battle marked a turning point in Japanese military history, as Nobunaga showed the effectiveness of modern weaponry, shifting the course of warfare in Japan forever. Another master tactician, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who rose from humble beginnings to become one of Japan's most powerful figures, used a combination of diplomacy, strategic alliances, and military innovation to secure his dominance. His conquest of Kyushu, a region in southern Japan, exemplified his ability to organize large-scale campaigns and maintain discipline among his troops. Hideyoshi's mastery of siege warfare was also evident during the siege of Odawara in 1590, where his forces, vastly outnumbered, managed to surround and starve out the Hojo clan's fortifications. His ability to adapt to different kinds of combat and manage logistics was a key factor in his success as a military commander. Ieyasu Tokugawa, the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate, also left an indelible mark on military strategy. His most significant victory came at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where his forces decisively defeated those loyal to Ishida Mitsunari. What set Tokugawa apart from other samurai generals was his ability to remain patient and wait for the right moment to strike. He understood that victory did not always lie in sheer force, but in careful alliances, knowing when to fight and when to hold back. Sekigahara secured Tokugawa's path to power and marked the end of the Sengoku period, leading to over 250 years of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate. The samurai commanders also made significant contributions to military innovations. The use of well-coordinated units and strict discipline became a hallmark of samurai warfare. They revolutionized the way battles were fought, often focusing on the morale of their troops and the psychological warfare that came with intimidating an enemy before the clash of swords. Many samurai generals, including Nobunaga and Ieyasu, also developed the practice of keeping their troops well trained in both combat and cultural discipline, emphasizing the importance of honor and unity within the ranks. These samurai commanders not only shaped Japanese warfare, but also influenced military strategies globally. Their ability to adapt to new technologies, develop innovative tactics, and maintain discipline in the heat of battle left a lasting legacy in the art of war. The samurai, known for their loyalty, bravery, and strategic genius, were not merely warriors. They were architects of a new era in military history. The samurai, with their discipline, artistry, and deep sense of honor, played a pivotal role in the development and expansion of Japanese culture, both within the country and beyond its borders. As warriors, they were essential to the military conquests and governance of Japan, but their influence also extended far into the cultural and diplomatic realms, facilitating Japan's exchange with other nations while preserving its distinctive identity. One of the most significant ways samurai contributed to the spread of Japanese culture was through their patronage of the arts. They were not only fierce warriors, but also connoisseurs of tea ceremonies, poetry, and calligraphy. The samurai were instrumental in the rise of tea culture, particularly the chanoyu, or Japanese tea ceremony. Tea ceremonies, rooted in Zen Buddhist practices, became a symbol of refinement and a method of displaying the samurai's discipline, humility, and connection to nature. The elegance of tea ceremonies, with their precise movements and deep philosophical underpinnings, was closely tied to samurai ideals of discipline and tranquility, reinforcing their status as both warriors and cultured individuals. This art form became a key element of Japan's cultural identity, one that the samurai nurtured and protected. In addition to tea ceremonies, the samurai were deeply involved in other artistic pursuits, such as the creation of exquisite calligraphy, the practice of poetry, and the collection of fine art. These cultural expressions were intertwined with the samurai's view of the world, wherein mastery of the mind was as important as mastery of the sword. As Japan's ruling class, samurai were also the guardians of Japanese traditions, ensuring the survival and flourishing of cultural practices like No theatre, which merged drama with music, and Zen garden design, which emphasized simplicity and harmony with nature. Through their support of such cultural expressions, the samurai helped preserve the essence of Japan's heritage and spread it throughout their communities. On the international stage, the samurai played a role in Japan's diplomatic relations, particularly in the Edo period under the Tokugawa shogunate. As Japan sought to protect its isolationist policies, samurai were central to Japan's interactions with foreign traders and diplomats. Although Japan largely closed its borders to foreign influence, samurai were still involved in limited exchanges with the Portuguese, Dutch, and Chinese. These interactions though limited in scope, allowed Japanese culture to be shared in small doses, particularly in the realm of trade and art. Samurai merchants and officials became intermediaries between Japan and the outside world, shaping how Japan was viewed and how it viewed others. The samurai also played an important role in the cultural exchange within Japan itself, particularly in the way they helped spread literacy and education. Their patronage of scholarship, particularly Confucianism and other philosophical studies, played a key role in shaping the intellectual climate of Japan, influencing generations of leaders and scholars. The samurai, as both military leaders and cultural custodians, thus contributed immensely to the growth and dissemination of Japan's cultural heritage. Through their involvement in the arts, their connections with foreign cultures, and their support of intellectual traditions, samurai helped elevate Japan's cultural standing, ensuring that their influence continued to resonate far beyond their era. The role of women in samurai culture is often overshadowed by the legendary tales of male warriors, yet women played a crucial and sometimes visible role in Japan's martial history. These women, while not as numerous as their male counterparts, were deeply connected to the samurai ethos and contributed significantly to the warfare and social structures that defined their time. The image of the samurai woman is more than that of a passive figure. She was often a fierce protector of her family, her clan, and her ideals. In the feudal period, women in samurai families were expected to uphold the same values of honor and discipline as their male counterparts. Although many women did not directly participate in formal battles, their roles in war were often just as vital, especially during sieges or in times of internal family conflict. Samurai women were often trained in the arts of self-defense and were capable of wielding weapons like the naginata, a pole weapon with a curved blade, or the katana when the situation demanded it. Some women fought to defend their homes or to avenge the death of loved ones, showing an unparalleled level of courage and loyalty. The contributions of women warriors in samurai society went beyond mere participation in physical combat. They were often the strategic brains behind military decisions, using their intelligence to navigate complex political and social networks. One of the most famous figures in this regard was Tomoe Gozen, a legendary female samurai from the late 12th century, known for her remarkable skill in horseback riding and archery. Tomoe fought in the Genpei War, a decisive conflict between the Taira and Minamoto clans. Her bravery on the battlefield was recognized by her contemporaries, and she became a symbol of strength and resilience in a predominantly male-dominated society. Despite the restrictions placed on women during the time, Tomoe's story has endured, offering a glimpse into the active participation of samurai women in Japan's martial culture. Another influential figure was Hojo Masako, the wife of Minamoto no Yoritomo, the first shogun of the Kamakura shogunate. Although she did not participate directly in combat, her influence over the military and political decisions of the Kamakura shogunate was immense. After her husband's death, Masako played a pivotal role in the governance of the shogunate, and her political acumen ensured the survival and stability of her family's rule. In addition to the more prominent warriors and political figures, many samurai women were responsible for the household defense during times of war. In the absence of their husbands or fathers, these women would manage the estate and protect the family's honor, often leading defense efforts when enemy forces approached their homes. Women were also crucial in maintaining the morale of the samurai men, encouraging them to adhere to the Bushido code and ensuring that the samurai spirit was alive in every generation. The legacy of these women has often been overlooked, but it is clear that the samurai woman was not merely a passive figure. She was a warrior, a strategist, and a leader in her own right. Through their actions, both on and off the battlefield. Women in samurai culture played an indispensable role in shaping the history of Japan and in the perpetuation of the samurai spirit that has survived for centuries. The development of the Bushido Code was a slow but steady evolution, deeply intertwined with the samurai's values and the social structure of feudal Japan. Rooted in the martial principles of loyalty, honor, and discipline, the Bushido Code was not a written set of laws, but rather a set of ethical guidelines that guided the behavior of samurai throughout their lives. It was a reflection of both the personal values of individual samurai and the social expectations placed upon them by their families, clans, and society. This code, though unwritten, would come to shape the samurai identity and leave a lasting influence on Japanese culture. The emergence of Bushido as a distinct code is linked to the increasing influence of the samurai class in the Kamakura and Muromachi periods. As the samurai transitioned from mere mercenaries to powerful feudal lords, they began to formalize a set of values that reflected their elevated social status and responsibilities. At its core, the Bushido Code emphasized 7 virtues: rectitude, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. These principles provided the samurai with a moral compass, dictating not only their conduct on the battlefield, but also in their personal lives. The samurai's role as both warriors and governing figures within Japan's feudal system further solidified the importance of Bushido. A samurai was not only expected to fight bravely in battle, but also to embody these ideals in every aspect of their life. The honor of the samurai was paramount, and the consequences of dishonor were severe. Failure to adhere to the principles of Bushido could lead to a loss of face, which for a samurai was a fate worse than death. The most extreme expression of this was seppuku, or ritual suicide, which was often performed to restore honor to one's name or to atone for perceived failure. Though initially rooted in the demands of military service, the influence of the Bushido Code expanded beyond the battlefield and became ingrained in samurai governance. As the samurai held more political power, they were expected to rule with fairness and justice, guided by the same virtues that defined their warrior spirit. This moral code permeated samurai society, shaping their relationships with other warriors, their lords, and even commoners. It fostered a sense of duty that went beyond personal gain, encouraging samurai to prioritize the greater good of their families, their clans, and, eventually, their country. The legacy of the Bushido Code endured long after the samurai class itself began to fade with Japan's modernization during the Meiji Restoration. Even in the face of profound societal and technological changes, the ideals of Bushido remained embedded in Japanese culture. They influenced not only martial practices, but also art, literature, and education. The samurai's unwavering commitment to their code became an enduring symbol of Japan's historical identity and a reflection of the values that shaped the country for centuries. In this way, Bushido evolved from an unwritten guide to the conduct of warriors into a philosophical and ethical foundation that transcended its original military context. It shaped future generations of Japanese people, inspiring them to uphold the values of integrity, loyalty, and honor in both personal and national life. The creation and influence of the Bushido Code left an indelible mark on Japan's history, its people, and its culture, continuing to guide the Japanese ethos long after the era of the samurai had passed. The spiritual journey of the samurai was as complex and layered as their role in Japanese society. While they were primarily known as fierce warriors, their lives were deeply influenced by the spiritual practices of Zen, Shinto, and Buddhism, each contributing to their development as disciplined, focused, and honorable individuals. These spiritual systems shaped not only their battle tactics, but also their view of life and death, grounding them in a deep sense of inner peace and mental fortitude. Zen Buddhism, with its emphasis on meditation and mindfulness, played a particularly transformative role in the spiritual evolution of the samurai. For samurai warriors, Zen was not just a religion, but a way of life that focused on achieving mental clarity and discipline. Through rigorous meditation, the samurai were trained to control their thoughts, emotions, and impulses, which was crucial both in battle and in everyday life. The ability to maintain calmness in the midst of chaos was a vital skill for a samurai, and Zen meditation provided the tools to master this state of mind. By emptying the mind of distractions, samurai were able to react swiftly and decisively in combat, with the same clarity of thought that guided them through their personal challenges. Shinto, the indigenous spirituality of Japan, also played an important role in shaping the samurai's spiritual identity. Shinto's reverence for nature, ancestors, and the divine presence in all aspects of life helped the samurai cultivate a deep respect for the natural world and the forces that governed it. Many samurai believed that they were directly connected to the spirits of their ancestors, and their actions in life were seen as a reflection of this divine heritage. This connection to the spiritual world reinforced the sense of duty and honor that was central to samurai identity. The act of fighting, for them, was not just a physical endeavor, but a spiritual one, a sacred duty to uphold the values of their ancestors and protect the lands they held dear. Buddhism, particularly its warrior-focused teachings, also had a profound impact on the samurai. The concept of impermanence, or the understanding that life and death are transient, allowed samurai to face the battlefield with an unwavering acceptance of their mortality. In Buddhism, there was no fear of death, only an understanding that it was a natural part of existence. This belief system helped samurai warriors face their own demise with grace and courage, knowing that their actions would live on in the legacy they left behind. The Buddhist teachings on compassion and detachment also encouraged samurai to maintain a sense of humility and respect for all life, both in and out of combat. The spiritual evolution of the samurai was therefore not confined to a single belief system, but was instead an integration of the teachings of Zen, Shinto, and Buddhism. These spiritual practices gave samurai the mental discipline and emotional resilience needed to live and fight with honor. The samurai's spiritual journey was one of continuous self-mastery, a journey that allowed them to transcend the violence of their world and find peace within themselves. This blend of spirituality and mental discipline ultimately shaped the samurai, not just as warriors, but as individuals who understood the deeper meaning of life and their place in it. The samurai have long captured the imagination of people around the world, their mystique woven into the fabric of popular culture through movies, television, and novels. From their roots in ancient Japan to their portrayal in modern entertainment, samurai have come to represent ideals of honor, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to duty. Over time, their image has evolved, but the essence of what they represent has remained consistent, often symbolizing the conflict between personal values and societal demands, as well as the timeless struggle between life and death. In the early depictions of samurai in popular culture, particularly in cinema, they were often portrayed as noble warriors upholding strict codes of honor. The samurai were seen as protectors of the innocent, battling against forces that threatened the stability and harmony of society. Films like Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, 1954, helped cement the image of the samurai as stoic, selfless individuals who fought not for personal gain, but for the good of others. In these early representations, The samurai's code of Bushido was central to their character, emphasizing their duty to their lord, their family, and their own moral compass. As samurai began to appear more frequently in Western media, their portrayal shifted somewhat. While still embodying the same ideals of discipline and honor, they were often cast as figures of mystery or even tragedy. This transition reflected a growing interest in the clash of cultures between Japan and the West. In the 1960s and 70s, the samurai were often depicted as both romanticized and tragic figures, misunderstood warriors caught between the traditional world they were born into and the changing realities of the modern era. Films like The Last Samurai, 2003, starring Tom Cruise, reinforced the image of the samurai as noble warriors, but they also explored the deep conflicts they faced as Japan modernized, ultimately leading to the demise of their once revered class. In television and novels, samurai have been depicted in a wide range of stories, from historical dramas to fantasy and science fiction. Samurai characters have appeared as heroes, anti-heroes, and even villains, each time reflecting different aspects of the samurai code and its place in the modern world. The most famous example of samurai in a non-Japanese context is perhaps the character of the Mandalorian, who echoes the samurai ethos of discipline, honor, and solitude while navigating the galaxy. The Star Wars franchise drew heavy inspiration from samurai films and philosophy, especially in its depictions of characters like Jedi Knights, who share many similarities with samurai warriors dedicated to their code and bound by a sense of duty. In more recent years, samurai have continued to evolve in popular entertainment, from anime series like Rurouni Kenshin to video games such as Ghost of Tsushima. Samurai characters have been adapted and reimagined for modern audiences. These portrayals explore not only the historical aspects of the samurai, but also the emotional and psychological struggles that come with living according to such a rigorous code. As a result, the samurai are no longer seen solely as warriors of the past, but as symbols of timeless virtues that transcend eras. Today, the samurai continue to be a popular figure in media, their legacy both preserved and reinvented for each new generation. Whether they are battling on the fields of feudal Japan or navigating the complexities of a futuristic dystopia, the samurai's presence in popular culture reminds us of the power of honor, discipline, and the courage to fight for what is right. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, the samurai class, once the pinnacle of Japanese society, began to lose its power and influence with the advent of the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century. The rapid modernization and westernization of Japan during this period marked the beginning of a profound shift, not only in the nation's political and economic structures, but also in its cultural foundations. For centuries, the samurai had been the enforcers of law, defenders of the land, and symbols of honor and discipline. However, as Japan sought to transform from a feudal society to a modern, industrialized nation, the samurai found their traditional roles increasingly irrelevant in the New World Order. With the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate in 1868, Japan embarked on a path of modernization under Emperor Meiji. The government sought to centralize power, dismantle the old feudal system, and create a unified, modern nation-state capable of competing with the industrial powers of the West. In this new order, the samurai's once powerful role as military leaders was soon eclipsed by the rise of a national army, trained and equipped in the ways of modern warfare. The samurai, who had long been the protectors of the land, now faced the dismantling of the very system that had defined their existence. The first blow to the samurai class came with the abolition of the Han system, which had been the backbone of feudal Japan. Samurai were, for the most part, directly tied to these domains, serving as retainers to local lords, daimyos. The Meiji government's sweeping reforms restructured Japan's political system, eliminating the feudal hierarchy and centralizing power under the emperor. Samurai no longer held their former privileges, including stipends, land, or military command. The introduction of a national conscription army further undermined the samurai's military authority, as the new army was based on merit and regular service, rather than birthright or tradition. As the samurai's influence in governance and military matters waned, they found themselves at a crossroads. Some attempted to adapt to the changing times, seeking new roles in the emerging industrial society or government service. Others resisted the transformation, unable to reconcile their centuries-old traditions with the modernizing world. The most significant symbol of this resistance was the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, led by Saigo Takamori, one of the last prominent samurai generals. The rebellion, which sought to restore the power and privileges of the samurai, was ultimately crushed by the new imperial army, marking the end of the samurai's military power. The Meiji Restoration also introduced modern warfare to Japan, shifting the focus from the samurai's traditional swordsmanship and honor-based combat to the use of firearms, artillery, and advanced tactics. The samurai's iconic katana, once a symbol of their strength and status, was rendered obsolete in the face of these new technologies. The rise of industrialization and the establishment of a modern military transformed Japan's battlefield, and with it, the role of the samurai. Though the samurai class was officially dismantled, their cultural legacy lived on, embedded deeply in Japanese society. The values of loyalty, honor, and discipline that had once defined the samurai were integrated into the nation's ethos and continue to influence Japanese culture, both in spirit and in practice, even as Japan modernized and entered the global stage. As Japan underwent a dramatic transformation during the Meiji Restoration, the samurai class, once the backbone of the nation's military and governance, found themselves at a crossroads. The sweeping reforms that reshaped Japan in the late 19th century marked the end of the samurai's traditional role, but their legacy was far from erased. Instead, their ideals, ethos, and even some of their structures were adapted to help Japan emerge as a modern, industrialized nation capable of competing with the Western powers that were rapidly changing the global order. The samurai were at the forefront of the political and military systems during the Tokugawa period. Their primary function was to protect and govern their territories under the shogunate, but when the Meiji government abolished the feudal system, the samurai were forced to relinquish their power and privileges, including their role as military elites and their hereditary positions. With the creation of a new, centralized government under the emperor, Japan sought to modernize by adopting Western political, economic, and military structures. However, instead of a complete break from the past, elements of samurai culture were absorbed into the fabric of the new society. One of the most significant ways the samurai contributed to Japan's transformation was through the adaptation of their code of ethics, Bushido. The code, which emphasized loyalty, honor, and discipline, continued to influence the development of Japan's modern military and governance. Although the samurai were no longer in charge of governing individual domains or leading armies, the values enshrined in Bushido were absorbed into the national psyche and became a guiding force in shaping Japan's modernization. The samurai ideals of loyalty and honor were carried forward into the new national army. While the samurai had traditionally fought with swords and armor, the introduction of modern military tactics and technology meant that they had to adapt. Many former samurai took on roles in the imperial army, as officers and leaders, ensuring that the principles of discipline and duty remained at the heart of the newly formed military system. The values of Bushido were integrated into the training and conduct of soldiers, and the loyalty to the emperor became a central tenet of the nation's military ethos. The samurai's legacy also permeated the new government, with many former samurai becoming bureaucrats, educators, and leaders in the rapidly industrializing economy. Their experience in governance, leadership, and strategy helped steer Japan through the early stages of modernization. The samurai's ability to adapt to changing circumstances, their knowledge of leadership, and their deep-rooted sense of duty played a crucial role in shaping the new political landscape. As the country opened up to international trade, many former samurai took on diplomatic roles, embodying the same values of loyalty and honor when representing Japan on the world stage. In many ways, the samurai's role in the transformation of Japan into a modern nation was not one of resistance or obsolescence, but of evolution. While they had lost their power as a class, their ideals helped guide Japan through a period of profound change. By adapting to new systems of governance and military organization, the samurai ideals of loyalty, discipline, and honor laid the foundation for Japan's emergence as a modern imperial power. The world of the samurai is steeped in myth and legend, their stories often filled with larger-than-life figures, supernatural feats, and tales of unparalleled bravery. These myths have been passed down through generations, immortalized in literature, art, and film, creating an image of the samurai as nearly mythical warriors. However, behind these captivating tales lies the reality of the samurai's role in Japanese society, often far less dramatic than the legends that surround them. One of the most enduring myths surrounding the samurai is their supposed invincibility. The image of a lone samurai facing down an entire army, cutting through scores of foes with his katana, has been perpetuated by both folklore and modern media. While samurai were indeed skilled warriors, they were not superhuman. Samurai were part of a larger military structure, and battles were fought by entire armies, not just individual warriors. Many samurai fought alongside comrades, relying on teamwork and strategy. As much as their own martial skills, the samurai were highly disciplined and trained in various combat techniques. But their success in battle often depended on factors such as terrain, morale, and the leadership of their commanders. Another prominent myth is the idea of the samurai as noble, selfless warriors, governed by an unwavering code of honor, with death being a preferred option rather than dishonor. This image has been romanticized to an extreme degree, particularly in stories of seppuku, or ritual suicide, where a samurai would disembowel himself to restore his honor. While it is true that many samurai adhered to Bushido, the samurai code, and that seppuku was sometimes used as a means of atoning for failure or disgrace, the actual practice was more complicated. Seppuku was often a political tool, sometimes forced upon a samurai by their lord, and at times, samurai could find themselves in circumstances where they had little choice but to comply rather than making a noble, voluntary decision. The notion that every samurai was constantly prepared to take their life at the slightest hint of dishonor is a distortion of the truth. Equally pervasive are the myths surrounding the samurai's relationship with their swords. While the katana is undoubtedly one of the most iconic symbols of the samurai, it was not always the center of the samurai's martial prowess. In reality, samurai used a variety of weapons, including spears and bows, which were often more effective in battle than the katana. The katana was a weapon of choice for personal combat, but was often used in conjunction with other weapons. Particularly in the earlier periods of samurai history, the mystical significance often attributed to the sword is also exaggerated, as the weapon was as much a functional tool as a symbol of the samurai's social status. The myths surrounding the samurai, while captivating, serve to elevate them into legendary figures that often obscure the true, multifaceted nature of their lives. Samurais were complex individuals, shaped not only by their loyalty and combat prowess, but also by the social and political structures of their time. Understanding the facts behind the myths allows us to appreciate the true historical significance of the samurai beyond the dramatic tales that have come to define them. The samurai, long heralded as the embodiment of Japanese culture, have played a pivotal role in shaping modern Japan's national identity. Even after the fall of the samurai class in the late 19th century, the ideals they embodied, honor, loyalty, discipline, and courage, continued to influence the collective consciousness of Japan. The samurai were more than just warriors. They were a symbol of the strength, resilience, and unity that would come to define the modern Japanese state. In the Meiji Restoration, as Japan began its transformation into a modern nation, the samurai's influence did not vanish, but was reinterpreted to fit the changing needs of the country. The samurai were seen as the defenders of Japan's traditional values, and even as the old feudal system was dismantled, their ideals were incorporated into the new, unified Japan. In particular, the samurai's devotion to loyalty and service to the nation was mirrored in the way the Japanese military and government structured themselves in the following decades. Even in the face of modernization, Japan's core values remained rooted in the samurai ethos. Beyond the military, samurai ideals permeated other facets of Japanese society. The emphasis on duty, respect, and honor laid the foundation for the country's hierarchical structures in business and government, creating a deeply ingrained sense of order and responsibility. The samurai's dedication to self-discipline and the cultivation of one's character became an important part of Japan's educational system, reinforcing the importance of personal growth, perseverance, and moral integrity. The image of the samurai also helped shape the world's perception of Japan in the 20th century. As Japan began to emerge as a global power, the samurai became an iconic symbol of the nation. Their image, portrayed through film, literature, and art, was not just a historical relic, but an enduring symbol of Japan's strength, resolve, and spirit. The image of the lone samurai, standing firm in the face of adversity, captured the imagination of the world and became synonymous with the Japanese identity. Even as Japan became more industrialized and modernized, the samurai's warrior ethos remained central to its self-image and global persona. The samurai's legacy is also evident in the way Japan approaches both its internal and external conflicts. The samurai spirit of never giving up, of fighting for honor and duty, is reflected in the country's post-war reconstruction and its rise to become an economic powerhouse. Their resilience is often seen in Japan's ability to overcome challenges, maintaining its cultural heritage while embracing progress and innovation. The lasting influence of the samurai on modern Japan is undeniable, as their ideals continue to shape not only the nation's identity, but also how the world views Japan. Even in a rapidly changing modern world, the samurai ethos of courage, honor, and loyalty remains a vital thread in the fabric of Japanese society. Through their legacy, the samurai have helped forge a national identity that bridges Japan's ancient traditions with its modern achievements, leaving an indelible mark on the country and the world. The samurai's influence on global warfare is a testament to their strategic brilliance, their understanding of combat, and their ability to adapt to new challenges while preserving the core principles of their martial traditions. Although the samurai as a class disappeared with the advent of modern military systems, their tactics and combat strategies left an indelible mark on military practices worldwide. The way samurai approached war, focusing on precision, discipline, and the integration of strategy with philosophy, shaped the way armies around the world would fight for centuries. The samurai's methods of combat, particularly in the art of battlefield tactics and personal duels, were rooted in a deep understanding of timing, terrain, and psychological warfare. Their strategies were not just about brute force, but about exploiting weaknesses in the enemy's formation or morale. For example, the concept of kendo, or the way of the sword, was not only about physical combat, but also about controlling the mind and body to gain an advantage over an opponent. This emphasis on mental discipline translated into military strategy, where the calm and focus of the samurai in the midst of chaos gave them an edge on the battlefield. Samurai also valued the importance of maneuverability and speed. Their ability to adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions, often using swift, decisive strikes, was revolutionary for its time. These principles can be seen in modern military tactics, where flexibility and rapid response are often key to gaining the upper hand. The samurai's preference for smaller, highly skilled units such as cavalry archers was another technique adopted by modern militaries. The use of mobility to flank or outmaneuver an enemy, rather than engaging in a frontal assault, was a method the samurai perfected, and one that has been integrated into modern military strategy. One of the most significant contributions of the samurai to global military practices is their approach to leadership and discipline. Samurai were not just warriors, but also leaders and educators who passed down their knowledge to the next generation. Their focus on hierarchy, respect, and loyalty created a structure that resonated in armies across the world. This structure emphasized the relationship between soldiers and their commanders, valuing both the individual's skill and the collective success of the group. These principles have endured in modern military organizations, where teamwork, discipline, and respect for leadership remain paramount. Moreover, samurai culture influenced the concept of honor in warfare, a notion that continues to shape military ethics today. Their code of conduct, which included strict rules about fighting with integrity, respecting the enemy, and fighting to the death if necessary, laid the groundwork for the development of wartime ethics in many cultures. Even in modern warfare, elements of this samurai spirit persist in the way soldiers are trained to respect life and uphold the dignity of their cause, even when engaged in brutal conflict. In essence, the samurai's legacy has transcended its time. Their combat strategies, leadership models, and ethical approach to warfare continue to inform the way militaries around the world conduct themselves today. Their influence is felt in everything from battlefield tactics to military training, and their dedication to honor, discipline, and precision continues to inspire soldiers and commanders across the globe. Through their timeless wisdom and battle-hardened strategies, the samurai have left an indelible mark on the history of warfare. The Boshin War, which spanned from 1868 to 1869, marked the final chapter for the samurai in their traditional role as the dominant military force in Japan. As the country moved toward modernization, this conflict symbolized the last desperate attempts of the samurai class to hold onto their power and influence in a rapidly changing world. The war, fought between the ruling Tokugawa shogunate and forces seeking to restore power to the imperial throne, was a defining moment in Japanese history and signaled the end of feudal samurai warfare. For centuries, the samurai had been the backbone of Japanese military strength, relying on their mastery of swordsmanship, strategy, and bushido, the code of honor that guided their lives. However, as Japan began to modernize under the influence of Western powers, this traditional combat style began to falter in the face of new technologies. particularly firearms. The Boshin War was a clash between the old ways and the new, where the samurai's reliance on traditional warfare faced an increasingly powerful and modernized army. In the early days of the Boshin War, the samurai, though still skilled in their combat techniques, were confronted with gunpowder-based weapons, which had become increasingly influential in warfare. The imperial forces, led by the pro-imperial samurai and their allies, were better equipped with firearms, artillery, and naval forces, all of which gave them a distinct advantage over the Tokugawa's forces. The shogunate's reliance on traditional samurai tactics, such as cavalry charges and hand-to-hand combat, could not match the firepower and distance capabilities of modern weapons. The battle for control of Japan's capital, Edo, modern-day Tokyo, in 1868, was a pivotal moment in the conflict, as the shogunate forces found themselves outgunned and outnumbered by the imperial army. The samurai's traditional fighting methods were no longer enough to secure victory. The Tokugawa samurai, who had once been invincible on the battlefield, were defeated by a force that utilized modern artillery and firearms with devastating effect. The battle marked the symbolic end of the samurai's military dominance in Japan. The shift from traditional samurai warfare to modern combat techniques during the Boshin War was not only tactical, but also philosophical. As the war dragged on, the samurai who had once fought with honor and valor began to realize that their way of life was being swept aside by the new technologies and social changes brought by the Meiji Restoration. The imperial army's swift and decisive victories revealed the inadequacies of the samurai class in adapting to new forms of warfare. Despite their bravery, the samurai were caught between an old, honorable world and a new, mechanized age. With the defeat of the Tokugawa shogunate and the subsequent restoration of imperial power, Japan entered a new era. The samurai class, once the rulers of the battlefield, was gradually disbanded as Japan embraced modernization and industrialization. The Boshin War was the final stand of the samurai, and with its end came the inevitable decline of the warrior class that had defined Japan for centuries. The war not only marked the fall of the Tokugawa regime, but also signified the end of an era for the samurai, who were forced to adapt to a world that no longer had a place for them in their traditional roles. The Boshin War remains a powerful reminder of the clash between the past and the future, where the legacy of the samurai was slowly but surely overshadowed by the forces of progress and modernization. In the modern world, the legacy of the samurai continues to resonate, shaping various aspects of Japanese society and even influencing global culture. While the warrior class no longer exists in its traditional form, the values they upheld, particularly their emphasis on discipline, honor, loyalty, and respect, still find relevance in contemporary life. Many aspects of samurai culture, once confined to the past, have been adapted and integrated into modern Japan, demonstrating the enduring nature of their philosophy. The samurai's legacy is especially apparent in the corporate and educational sectors. The concept of Bushido, or the samurai code, remains a guiding principle for many in Japan's professional world. The idea of dedicating oneself fully to one's work, striving for perfection, and upholding integrity and loyalty is central to the Japanese work ethic today. Corporations in Japan place a strong emphasis on discipline, perseverance, and teamwork, ideals that can trace their roots back to the samurai. In schools, the importance of respect, both for others and oneself, mirrors the respect that samurai were expected to show to their masters, peers, and the world around them. The philosophy of service to a greater cause is deeply ingrained in the educational system, shaping the character of future generations. Beyond Japan, Samurai ideals have permeated the global consciousness through various mediums, including literature, film, and martial arts. Samurai characters continue to populate movies, anime, and novels, often embodying the virtues of the warrior class: courage, loyalty, and a commitment to a moral code. These portrayals, while sometimes romanticized or exaggerated, help to preserve the essence of the samurai spirit. Martial arts, such as kendo, judo, and aikido, which evolved from samurai techniques, remain popular worldwide. These disciplines still teach not only physical prowess but also mental discipline, respect for others, and the pursuit of self-improvement principles that were central to samurai training. The modern-day Japanese self-defense forces, though a far cry from the feudal samurai armies, carry with them the traditions of the past. The samurai's strategic brilliance and their emphasis on honor and duty to the nation have influenced military doctrine, even as Japan's armed forces have evolved to meet the challenges of the 21st century. The samurai's legacy also persists in the realm of the arts. Traditional Japanese calligraphy, tea ceremonies, and garden design often reflect the samurai's appreciation for beauty, simplicity, and order. These practices are not just aesthetic pursuits, but are deeply spiritual, embodying the samurai's understanding of mindfulness, patience, and the fleeting nature of life. Samurai poets and artists, such as the famous Matsuo Basho, whose haikus continue to inspire, have also left their mark on the cultural landscape, influencing both Eastern and Western writers and thinkers. In essence, while the samurai may no longer fight on battlefields, their values remain alive in both Japan and the wider world. Their teachings on discipline, respect, and integrity continue to guide individuals and communities, ensuring that the spirit of the samurai endures through the centuries. The image of the samurai in the Western imagination has been shaped and romanticized over centuries, often in ways that blend fact with fiction. Western literature, films, and popular culture have constructed a vivid portrayal of the samurai, making them emblematic of noble warriors, bound by an unwavering code of honor, loyalty, and discipline. This image, however, is not always an accurate reflection of the samurai's true historical existence, but rather a blend of selective aspects of their culture that resonate with broader Western ideals of heroism and virtue. The fascination with samurai culture in the West can be traced back to early encounters with Japan during the 19th century, particularly after Japan opened its doors to the outside world. The samurai's distinct visual identity, clad in armor, wielding katanas, and displaying stoic resolve, captivated Western audiences. These images were often romanticized and filtered through a lens of exoticism, making the samurai appear as noble, almost mythical figures. They were depicted as paragons of discipline and honor, which aligned well with the Western ideal of the heroic warrior. But this image often overlooked the complexities and contradictions within samurai society. In literature, samurai began to emerge as characters representing the clash between tradition and modernity, particularly during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Authors such as Eiji Yoshikawa and Lafcadio Hearn helped to define the samurai in ways that appealed to Western audiences. Yoshikawa's epic novel Musashi told the story of Miyamoto Musashi, one of Japan's most famous swordsmen, who became a symbol of the samurai's quest for self-mastery and moral enlightenment. Musashi's life was portrayed as a search for spiritual and intellectual growth, emphasizing virtues such as courage, perseverance, and discipline. Similarly, Hearn's writings about Japan and its culture played a significant role in creating an idealized image of the samurai, focusing on their nobility and commitment to honor. In film, the samurai became an iconic figure, particularly in Western cinema, where directors such as Akira Kurosawa crafted films like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo that explored themes of justice, loyalty, and sacrifice. Kurosawa's samurai films resonated deeply with Western audiences, who admired the samurai's unwavering commitment to their code, even in the face of overwhelming odds. These films, along with those of Western directors influenced by them, further cemented the image of the samurai as stoic warriors willing to fight for the greater good, even when it meant personal sacrifice. The romanticization of samurai culture in the West has led to their portrayal as noble warriors, adhering to a code that is both rigid and elevated above worldly concerns. This idealized view of the samurai often obscures the reality of their more complex and sometimes brutal history. In the Western imagination, the samurai's commitment to honor and discipline has become emblematic of a timeless, almost mythical form of chivalry, often detached from the historical realities of feudal Japan. Despite the romanticized perceptions, the samurai's influence on Western culture is undeniable. The samurai have become a symbol of honor, discipline, and heroism, principles that continue to resonate in both popular culture and philosophical discourse. Whether through films, literature, or martial arts, the samurai's legacy has left an indelible mark on the Western imagination, shaping how the world views these complex and multifaceted warriors. The enduring spirit of the samurai is not confined to the past. It transcends time, continuing to inspire individuals across the world today. Rooted in a culture defined by duty, honor, and sacrifice, the samurai's ethos has found its place in modern society, influencing personal identity and the way people approach challenges in their own lives. The values instilled in the samurai discipline, loyalty, self-mastery, and respect remain relevant even as the world has evolved into a much different place than the feudal Japan of the samurai's heyday. At its core, the samurai spirit emphasizes an unwavering commitment to personal and communal responsibility. Samurai were expected to live by the Bushido Code, which demanded loyalty to their lord, respect for the laws of the land, and the cultivation of virtues such as courage, honesty, and integrity. These principles have had a lasting impact, often becoming a model for those striving to lead with honor, whether in business, military service, or everyday life. The samurai's dedication to mastering both their minds and bodies provides an enduring example of what it means to pursue excellence, not just in a particular skill, but in one's character as well. The samurai spirit also finds expression in the resilience with which they faced adversity. Faced with political upheavals, social changes, and the constant threat of war, samurai were conditioned to adapt, endure, and push forward, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. In the modern world, where people often confront personal and professional obstacles, the samurai's perseverance serves as a reminder that strength lies not in avoiding hardship, but in meeting it head-on with resolve. Their ability to rise above challenges, whether on the battlefield or in their personal lives, has inspired countless individuals to cultivate a similar strength within themselves. Moreover, the samurai's spirit has influenced the way people approach concepts like leadership and self-discipline. Samurai leaders were not just warriors, but also guardians of their people's well-being, setting an example of how leadership can be built on a foundation of selflessness, integrity, and wisdom. Today, those in positions of authority in various sectors draw upon the samurai's principles to shape their leadership styles. Whether in business, politics, or family, the samurai's commitment to serving others with honor and humility continues to resonate deeply. The art of the samurai, whether it's the precision of sword fighting, the serenity of tea ceremonies, or the elegance of calligraphy reminds modern individuals of the importance of discipline and focus. These practices, developed through centuries of refinement, offer valuable lessons in how to bring mindfulness and grace into the daily hustle of life. Many people, inspired by the samurai's deep connection to tradition and mastery, find strength and purpose in pursuing their own passions with the same dedication. Today, the samurai spirit continues to thrive in a variety of ways. It can be seen in the resilience of those who push through adversity, the leaders who strive to uphold their principles, and the artists who pursue their craft with unwavering devotion. The spirit of the samurai, far from being a relic of the past, is alive in the hearts of individuals who seek to live with integrity, respect, and strength, regardless of the circumstances. It's a testament to the timeless nature of the samurai's code, one that will continue to guide and inspire future generations, transcending borders and time. The true legacy of the samurai is not simply confined to their military prowess or their defining code of honor, but rather it lies in the deeper, lasting influence they have had on the cultural and social fabric of Japan. Their impact transcends the boundaries of time and remains integral to shaping the nation's identity even today. The samurai's role in Japan's development as a unified, disciplined society is foundational, serving as a model for modern-day values that continue to define the nation on the global stage. The samurai were not only warriors, but custodians of the Bushido Code, which emphasized the virtues of loyalty, courage, respect, and self-discipline. These principles shaped the way people interacted with each other and approached life itself. Through centuries of warfare, political intrigue, and societal upheaval, the samurai maintained their integrity and commitment to service, setting a precedent for generations to come. Today, Japan's emphasis on dedication, harmony, and respect within its culture can be traced back to these samurai ideals, which permeate everyday life and continue to inform the Japanese worldview. In modern Japan, the spirit of the samurai is alive in the nation's enduring focus on honor, duty, and excellence. The discipline ingrained in samurai culture can be seen in Japan's technological advancements, business practices, and work ethic, all of which reflect a commitment to precision and quality. Whether in the meticulous production of cars, electronics, or the fine arts, Japan's reputation for excellence is a direct legacy of the samurai's attention to detail and craftsmanship. Moreover, the samurai's sense of responsibility to others, whether to their family, their lord, or their community, has left an indelible mark on Japan's social structure. Even today, Japanese society places a high value on collective well-being, with an emphasis on cooperation, mutual respect, and duty to the greater good. The samurai's deep connection to service, both on and off the battlefield, shaped the nation's sense of unity and identity. The legacy of the samurai also extends beyond Japan's borders. Internationally, Japan's reputation for discipline, honor, and hard work is often associated with the enduring spirit of the samurai. Their image, both in historical accounts and modern portrayals, has come to symbolize the nation's strength and resilience, particularly in the face of adversity. In literature, film, and popular culture, the samurai continue to serve as icons of courage and honor, reminding the world of a time when warriors fought not only for their survival, but for the values that defined them. Ultimately, the samurai's true legacy is in the way their ideals continue to shape Japan's culture, identity, and world reputation. Though the samurai class may no longer exist in the traditional sense, their values endure, influencing every facet of Japanese society. Their unwavering commitment to honor, discipline, and service has provided Japan with a moral and cultural compass that still guides the nation today.